Hey my watchers, welcome. Today we are gonna see. What if Harry builds a harem with Lucy Pennywise in Chronicles of Narnia? Part 1. River Song, Doctor Who Season 30, Episode 9, Forest of the Dead. BBC Wales, 2008. From Doctor Who Season 29, Episode 3, Gridlock, 2007. Location, Pharmacy Town, the Undercity, New York, New Earth. Time, September 5th, 00000053 CE. Humanian era. The last Time Lord in existence, known as the Doctor, was certainly feeling his age today, and that is saying something because his being a Time Lord makes it quite difficult to work out ages. At one time, he had used the year of his home planet, Gallifrey, which would make him now 1021, almost 1022, but since it was now destroyed and time-locked, he had found it far better to think of his age in Earth. Years, which means he is 901 years old. As he pondered his age and whether it was possible to feel age when you weren't quite sure of it, he directed his relatively new human companion Martha Jones, a Ghanaian English medical student from London, back towards his space-time machine, known as the TARDIS, pointedly shrugging off her questions about his people, the austere Time Lords, and his planet, the famous and mighty Gallifrey. Already frustrated from his lack of answers, Martha spied an old folding chair lying abandoned on the ground in the midst of Pharmacy Town, and straightening it up, she sat down, crossing her arms and legs looking at the Doctor expectantly. Watching as she did this, the Doctor looked around for a moment before asking, "All right, are you staying? Till you talk to me properly, yes," he said, "last of your kind." "What does that mean?" Martha asked, looking at this enigma standing before her, the anger at his lack of any kind of personal information clear on her face. "It really doesn't matter." The Doctor continued to resist her questions, his whole body language screaming out his discomfort at the current subject of conversation. "You don't talk. You never say. Why not?" Martha asked exasperatedly, still searching for answers. Suddenly all around them, the voices of the city started to rise up as the Doctor and Martha looked around at the city above them, and soon, faintly, but getting louder and louder, the words of the hymn "Abide with Me" echoed through the city. Even as Martha made note, "It's the city. They're singing." The words of the hymn drifting down from the overcity weakened the last of the Doctor's resolve, and for the first time since he met Martha, for the first time since the Time War even, he began to pour his heart out. "I lied to you, because I liked it. I could pretend. Just for a bit. I could imagine they were still alive, underneath a burnt orange sky. I'm not just a Time Lord. I'm the last of the Time Lords." The face of Bo was wrong. "There's no one else," the Doctor explained to his companion, who now listened raptly. "What happened?" Martha asked as though she were begging him to continue. The Doctor didn't say anything for a moment. Instead, he moved over to a nearby pile of junk and pulled out a folding chair, a perfect match of the one Martha was using, and shaking it off, he moved over to sit in front of Martha, and leaning forward towards her, he started his tale. "There was a war. A time war. The last great time war. My people fought a race called the Daleks for the sake of all creation, and they lost. They lost. Everyone lost. They're all gone now. My family, my friends, even that sky. Oh, you should have seen it, that old planet." As the Doctor continued, Martha watched, smiling herself, as the Doctor's face lit up with fond memories of Gallifrey, the shining world of the Seven Systems. The second sun would rise in the south, and the mountains would shine. The leaves on the trees were silver, and when they caught the light every morning, it looked like a forest on fire. When the autumn came, the breeze would blow through the branches like a song. As the Doctor continued to speak, the words pouring from his heart and out his mouth, the sounds of the singing city rose up and started the long process of rejuvenation. All the while, though, there in Pharmacy Town in New York's dense Undercity, the Doctor told Martha Jones his story, more than he had told even Rose, the woman he thought he loved, far more than any of his companions, save perhaps Susan, knew. He didn't quite know why, but it just seemed comfortable for him to tell everything to this Ghanaian, English medical student opposite him. By the time he finished his story, his shoulders were shaking with silent sobs as he struggled to his feet. He was momentarily embarrassed as Martha pulled him into a warm and strangely soothing embrace before the two turned and entered the TARDIS, the door closing with a slight thud, followed by a strange groaning noise as the purple police public call box faded from sight. Location: the doctor's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. The doctor tossed his brown trench coat over one of the large coral supports surrounding the main console room of his beloved space-time machine, waltzing over to the console and starting his usual bounding routine for programming a new destination. His manic dance was interrupted, however, by the ominous clanging of the cloister bell. "What?" the doctor asked, looking around confusedly. "What's wrong, doctor?" Martha asked, the doctor's sudden change in demeanor making her anxious and slightly scared. The Time Lord didn't answer, instead running around the console to pull the scanner which was hanging off the bottom of the time rotor around, scanning the Gallifreyan text on the screen. "What?" he asked again, more urgently this time. Moments later, however, the cloister bell's clanging increased in speed, and the scanner now read 4 simple words in Earth English, flashing over and over Time Lord in danger, followed by the space-time coordinates, the doctor vaguely recognizing it as somewhere in England's West Country, on October 31st, 1981. "What?" he yelled now, absolute confusion showing all over his face. Finally, though, the realization of just what was going on hit him, and he sprang into action, reprogramming the TARDIS, even as Martha continued asking him confusedly what was going on. The doctor answered, but in his adrenaline-charged, slightly hopeful state he highly doubted he would ever remember what he had told her. Something about another Time Lord in Wales or along those lines. After several minutes of flying through the time vortex, the TARDIS landed with a jolt and both Martha and the doctor were thrown to the floor. As they both stood up and reacquired equilibrium, the doctor ran out the door of the TARDIS, and it was all Martha could do to follow him. Location: Godric's Hollow, near Bodmin, England. Earth. Time: October 1981 CE, Humanian era. As soon as they exited the TARDIS, Martha and the doctor were forced to squint as the heat and the light from the flaming wreckage hit them. The flames cast eerie shadows on the scene of complete and utter devastation. Just meters away from the TARDIS was what had once been a 2-story house, but was now little more than a pile of rubble and debris. Most shocking to Martha, though, was the sound of a baby's cries from somewhere within the ruin. The doctor heard the cries and sprang into action. Rushing into the ruin, he quickly located the child. He noticed that the boy had auburn hair, and judging by the charred photos he had seen lying around, he got this from his mother. But as he picked his way towards the child, he recognized the milky white light of regeneration energy pouring out from the infant's head and limbs. Once, not all that long ago, he would have been concerned by an infant regenerating, what with the 13 incarnation limit, but soon after the Time War, he had come to realize that the Time Lords had removed this restriction during the Time War, and that he himself had used the moment to end and time-lock the war before the Time Lords had reinstated it. As much as he hated the thought, he and this child were virtually immortal. As he watched, the energy faded away, leaving the child now with hair as black as the night, piercing emerald green eyes and an unusual lightning bolt-shaped scar on his forehead. And the doctor had a feeling that this unusual addition had something to do with the reason for his death. He gingerly picked up the infant and made his way out through the wreckage towards the TARDIS, where he was met by Martha and a couple of other familiar men. "Charles? Sirius?" the doctor asked, looking at the older heir to Britain's throne and the 21-year-old Marquis of Blackmore. "Yeah, document came as soon as I heard." "Blasted rat," Pettigrew, the young noble groused. "Yes, my dear doctor. Mum asked me to come in her place, lines of succession and all that, no doubt." Charles, Prince of Wales, spoke cordially, although the somberness of the occasion was clear. "What happened here?" the doctor asked, looking around at the utter devastation all around him. "Unfortunately, Voldemort happened," Sirius said, before adding bitterly, although perhaps it would be better to say that Pettigrew's final betrayal happened. "You mean Peter?" the doctor asked, trailing off before the end of the sentence. "Yes, it does rather appear that way," Charles nodded sadly. "I have always said that young Sirius or myself would have been a better choice." The doctor too shook his head sadly. He hadn't visited James and Lily since the birth, as he honestly did not know how the Fidelius charm and various other wards would react to the presence of such a complicated space-time event as himself. Charles finally took a moment to look at the infant in the doctor's arms, noticing the change in the babe's countenance, exclaiming, "My word, Doctor, has young Harry regenerated? Charles looked up at the longtime friend of the royal family. It would appear so. Charles, the doctor nodded, the look on his face changing to puzzlement. But I can't understand how. The only two ways it would be possible were if Harry were descended from Time Lords on both sides of the family, or if he had been through the time vortex shortly after birth. But neither of those scenarios seem likely to me. And dear Lily and James? Charles asked, tearing up at the thought of what could have happened to his baby sister and brother-in-law. The doctor nodded toward the wreckage, voice cracking slightly as he spoke sorrowfully. Inside. Dead? Sirius asked, still holding a hope, albeit minuscule, that his childhood friends were still alive, a hope which was snapped by the doctor's nod. The distraught man continued sobbing, and it was all Charles and the doctor could do to console the man. Oh, wait, the doctor suddenly said, realization dawning all over his face. He pulled Martha to stand next to him. Where are my manners? Martha Jones, this is His Royal Highness Charles, Prince of Wales, and this is the Most Honourable the Marquis of Blackmore, Master Auror Sir Sirius Black. The doctor gestured rather redundantly to the two men, as it was quite obvious which of the men was the Prince of Wales. Martha curtsied to the prince, and nodded courteously to the nobleman, both of whom waved off any pretense of superiority, both kissing the back of her hand, leading to Martha blushing deeply under the gaze of the attractive Sirius Black. Now, Doctor, Mum was rather hoping you would be here when she heard. She's been in contact with Albus. You remember the Earl of Moreton? The Prince of Wales waited until he received a nod before continuing. Well, they both agree that it would be best if, for the immediate future, Harry were to be taken out of the limelight, so to speak. That would probably be for the best, I think. The doctor nodded thoughtfully, looking down at the little child in his arms. Firstly, though, we should go to the palace. Mum would like a chat with you about it all. Charles added, and then led the starstruck Martha and the currently doting doctor over to a limousine, out of sight of the ruins, and the car sped off towards Bodmin Airfield. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: November 1981 CE, Humanian era. Martha's mind was spinning as she considered everything which had happened in the last few hours. Earlier that evening, the doctor, the face of Beau, and herself had unlocked the new New York motorway, and she had learned much about her mysterious companion's past. Just minutes later, she had arrived in Wales, where the TARDIS had landed at the scene of some kind of explosion. And now, just hours later, she was being escorted down a corridor in Buckingham Palace of all places by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, who, it seemed, knew the doctor at least well enough to know of regeneration, something she had only learned of on New Earth. As they maneuvered through the palace to the private study of Her Majesty the Queen, somewhere in the back of her mind, Martha realized that she will have met both Elizabeth I and Elizabeth II. Who else on earth, save the doctor, could say that? Martha's nerves really kicked in, and she started shaking as Charles knocked on the oak door to the study, holding the young prince carefully as he waited for the call of enter. Leading the time travelers in. Martha Jones and the doctor, Mum, Charles said as Martha clumsily curtsied, glaring confusedly at the lack of decorum from the doctor, who leaned casually against the bookcase, nodding at the Queen of Great Britain. The 55-year-old monarch was having none of this, though, as she moved around the large mahogany desk to embrace her old friend the doctor, before moving to shake Martha's hand warmly, as though they were friends meeting for the first time in years. Welcome to Buckingham Palace, Martha. Doctor. I only wish it were under more pleasant circumstances, she said as she gestured the doctor and Martha into a seat each. Thank you, Your Majesty, the doctor said with a smile, inclining his head as he did so. Oh, pish, doctor. Stop taking the mickey with all this propriety nonsense, the Queen admonished him, completely surprising. Martha, I'm sorry everyone, but I really should be getting back to Diana now, Charles said, and at his mother's nod of assent, the heir apparent left the study to make his way home, passing Prince Harry to Martha as he did so. After Charles had left, the three remaining got down to business as the Queen explained just what she wanted from the doctor as the guardian of her second grandchild. First and foremost, of course, was that he had to attend Hogwarts in his home era. That is, starting in 1991. Over the course of 2 hours, Martha held the royal infant as she watched on as the alien and the monarch had a back-and-forth discussion which was starting to draw up a plan for Harry's welfare, including the cover story that would be used when Harry eventually returned to his rightful place within the royal family. Just as the discussion wound up and Martha thought it was time to return to the TARDIS, she was again surprised when they were led by Elizabeth, as she insisted the doctor call her, through the palace to the ballroom for a small ceremony. Elizabeth's idea of a small ceremony turned out to be anything but as Martha knelt before the Queen, and when she rose she was the first non-magical person in 142 years to be appointed to the Order of Merlin, her rank of Dame Commander entitling her to the title Dame Martha Jones MDC, a fact which the med student could scarcely believe. While Martha was pondering her new title, Elizabeth was decided how to honor her friend the Time Lord. "I believe Victoria knighted you in the 1870s? The doctor nodded in affirmation. "Well then I believe I can improve on that. What nom de guerre shall you use?" "John Smith, ma'am," the doctor prompted. "Very well. It will take a while to finalize the letter's patent, but I name thee Sir John Smith, 1st Baronet," the Queen announced regally, dubbing the kneeling Time Lord with her sword before adding, "And I will see my way to appoint you to the Privy Council as well." Eventually, a still dazed Martha was led back to the TARDIS, which the doctor had called to London, the doctor still cradling the young black-haired Time Lord Harry, and the TARDIS had departed once more to more adventures in time and space. 3 years later. Location: Finchley Primary School, Barnet, London, England. Earth time: September 1936 CE, Humanian era. Harry Potter, a young Time Lord born to parents who were both descended from Godric Gryffindor, had just turned 4, and his guardian and fellow Time Lord the Doctor had enrolled the boy at a primary school in Finchley. But rather than his home era, he was to attend the school in 1936 for reasons that Harry was far too young to comprehend. At lunchtime on his first day, Harry was searching for somewhere private to eat his lunch when he noticed one of his classmates, a young girl, sitting under a wizened old oak tree away from the rest of their fellow students. Ever curious, a trait inspired in him by the doctor, Harry wandered over. "Excuse me, I wondered if I might join you," Harry asked, showing more maturity than his 4 years should have allowed. The young girl looked up at him, allowing Harry to notice her auburn-tinted hair and almost ethereally blue eyes for the first time. She looked at him thoughtfully, seeming to stare into his very soul, for a moment before nodding and patting the ground beside her. "I'm Harry Potter, by the way," Harry introduced himself. "Lucy Pevensey." The girl offered her hand to Harry, who shook it. "I was wondering if we might be friends?" Lucy asked after a companionable silence. "I've never really had a friend before." "Neither have I," Harry noted sadly, "but I'm quite sure we could be brilliant friends." He finished with a smile. Harry Potter and A Harry Potter Chronicles of Narnia Doctor Who fanfic by Dr. B. 1993. Chapter 1 Hendon House. "I'm a king. I fought wars. I've led armies. Not in this world." Edmund Lucy, The Chronicles of Narnia. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader FOX Walden Media. Location: the Doctor's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. "Look at him. He's smitten, isn't he?" Donna whispered as she and the Doctor watched the Doctor's 9-year-old charge look anxiously back at the scanner every few seconds as it continued to count down the time until the TARDIS would land in wartime London. Probably. Not that he would understand it yet. "I think Lucy is too wonderful girl. It's just whether or not they realize how right for each other they could be," the Doctor said somewhat non-committally, not wanting to tell his companion what he saw in the twisting timelines before him. Location: Strand Tube Station, Westminster, London, England. Earth. Time: September 1941 CE. 9-year-old Harry Potter had stepped out of the TARDIS near Charing Cross, waving goodbye to the Doctor and his companion Donna, quickly making his way to Strand Tube Station where he could take a Northern Line train to Hendon Central Station near his new boarding school, Hendon House. As he descended the stairs down to the platforms, he really hoped that Lucy would be at the station. He smiled as he thought about the youngest Pevensey, and he often thought that the very reason the Doctor had enrolled him in primary school in 1936 was just so that he would meet the young Lucy. He had quickly become friends with the sweet and effervescent auburn-haired girl when they met as 4-year-olds at primary school in Finchley, and after she had been evacuated to Oxfordshire during 1940, they had tried to keep in touch, with the doctor setting up a home near Oxford as part of Harry's cover for his evacuation from London. Lucy had of course told Harry of her adventures into Narnia, just as Harry had told Lucy of his adventures with the doctor, and Harry believed her. How could he not, with all the things he had seen with the doctor? Now, they were both 9 years old and off to their first year of boarding school. Lucy would be attending St. Finbarr's Girls' School, which was just across the street from the school he was attending. He reached the platform at the base of the stairs just in time to see the Pevensies looking around confusedly before sitting back down on the bench they were in front of. He looked at the clock and saw that the train was still not due for another 10 minutes. So he walked closer to the group and, noticing none of them were paying attention to him, he said, "Hey Lou." Harry winced slightly as Lucy squealed before running to hug her best friend, and he just had enough time to place his suitcase down before Lucy's arms wrapped around his neck in one of trademark hugs, the ones that were reserved on Earth for her siblings and Harry, and in Narnia for Tumnus and Caspian. Harry stood up slightly straighter, lifting Lucy marginally off the ground, swinging her slightly, causing her to giggle before setting her down. "Harry, how was your holidays?" Lucy asked as she pulled away, pointedly ignoring the kissy faces being pulled by her 3 elder siblings. So much for mature, she thought. "It was good. We went to 1926 and a 51st century library planet." "What about you?" Harry explained in hushed tones. "The holidays were so boring," Lucy moaned, but then brightened considerably when she continued. "But then just before you got here we got pulled back into Narnia, right off the platform. 1,300 years had passed since we had left, but Aslan had pulled us back to help put the rightful king on the throne." Lucy continued to tell Harry everything about her second trip to Narnia, even as the train pulled into the station and they followed Lucy's elder brothers and sister onto the train, awkwardly trying to fit all their luggage on the train. Location: West Hendon Broadway, Hendon, London, England, Earth. Time: October 1941 CE. Just over a month into their first term at boarding school, Harry and Lucy had the opportunity to head into Hendon once again, as they had each of the first 3 weekends of term. West Hendon Broadway, as with every other weekend, was currently overflowing with students from the 2 local public schools all wandering around, enjoying the opportunity to get away from school and to mingle with their friends both from their own school and those from the school across the road. "So, what do you want to do now?" Harry asked as they left the second-hand bookshop on Broadway. "Let's go to the park," Lucy said with a smile. "Just go for a stroll through Hendon Park." "Then the park it is," Harry said, offering his hand to his friend, and they set off, having to cross 2 railway lines along the way. They arrived at the park, which was currently occupied by several couples from the 2 schools taking the opportunity for some quality time together. The pair followed the main path through the park, enjoying the sights of the duck pond and the oak trees lining the path. They passed a park bench along the way, and they recognized the couple in that seat in a passionate embrace as Susan and her latest beau, Stephen. Harry and Lucy looked at each other and ran off, barely containing their sniggering until they were out of earshot. As they reached the end of the path through the park, Harry glanced at his watch and paled slightly. Lou? We've only got 10 minutes before we have to be back." "We'd better hurry then," Lucy answered after she too had paled, as they clasped hands and started running back in the direction of Hendon House and St. Finbarr's in the northern part of the suburb of Hendon. The pair made it back with just barely 2 minutes to spare, and Lucy pulled Harry into a quick hug before she jogged across the road, to have her name marked off by one of St. Finbarr's staff members, while Harry walked back through the main gate of Hendon House. Location: Hendon House, Hendon, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1942 CE. Harry shook his head to clear the cobwebs, staring down at his science textbook. Even as a Time Lord, chemistry is not always easy, especially when you are thinking about something completely different like friends. Harry tried hard to focus on the words of the page, only some of them registering in his head. Svante Arrhenius's definition: acids form H ions. Bases: OH-, Newer, Bronsted-Lowry, donation of a proton. Harry sighed and gave up, pushing his textbook back. "What's the point of being a super-brained alien if you can't concentrate?" he thought with a sigh. He jumped slightly, though, as he felt the psychic paper the doctor had given him heat up. Scrambling through his pockets, he pulled the offending article out and read the message, running his hand through his black mop of hair, sighing as he stared at the message. The doctor had been using it to keep in touch with Harry during the year because letters can't be sent through the time vortex. He read the message over in his head. Donna and I going to Shanshan have organized for you to stay in Cambridge with Harold and Alberta Scrubb. They will pick you up from railway station. He took one last look of frustration at the psychic paper before throwing it aside and going back to revising for his science test next week. Location: St. Finbarr's Girls' School, Hendon, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1942 CE. Just across the road from where Harry was revising for science, Lucy was trying hard to revise for an upcoming maths test. But nothing about geometry or algebra was sitting right in her head. Why do 9-year-olds care about this stuff? Lucy thought frustratedly. Heavensy, you got a letter. The harsh voice of one of the head girls' many lackeys poked her head through the door and tossed a letter on the floor next to the bin. Oops, silly me. Nearly in the bin, the girl said with a sickly sweet voice, cackling evilly as she continued along the dormitory hall. Lucy repressed the urge to chase the girl and give her a piece of her mind. It wouldn't do to get a weekend detention and a letter home. The head girl and her friends had been torturing her all year, seeing as she was the youngest at the school, and Susan was too busy getting caught up in dating and makeup and whatever else, trying to forget about Narnia to worry about Lucy's problems. Lucy huffed to herself. I wasn't always the youngest and least popular. I was a beautiful and much-loved queen. Aslan's golden child. Her mutterings about Aslan always drew a smile, and now she was in a better state of mind. She bent down to pick up the letter. She opened the envelope, and by the time she finished reading the letter, she had to resist the temptation to tear it to shreds. Peter and Susan would be spending summer in America with their mother and father, while Edmund and herself would be staying in Cambridge with Harold and Alberta Scrubb, and their foul son Eustace Clarence. If anyone deserved such a name, he did. She read the letter over and over, hoping that she was just hallucinating and it said nothing of the sort, but no, she looked inside the envelope, and there were 2 tickets to Cambridge from Liverpool Street. No, wait a minute, Lucy counted again, and there were 3. Lucy looked back at the letter in confusion and noticed a postscript. Dr. Smith, the guardian of your friend Harry and his wife have been sent to Shanshan. I assume it is in China for work and cannot take Harry for the summer, so the doctor and I organized for your aunt and uncle to look after Harry too. Be a dear and give him the 3rd train ticket for me. Lucy smiled slightly, knowing that Harry would be there too, although she had absolutely no idea how or why Harold and Alberta agreed to look after a boy that knew nothing about save for that he was best friends with their niece. Then again, Harold and Alberta never had made any sense to Lucy. Even her maths homework made more sense than the slightly unconventional Harold and Alberta. She sighed to herself before going back to her revision. Location: Liverpool Street Railway Station, Camden Islington, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1942 CE. Harry, Lucy and Edmund sat on a bench seat on platform 2 as they waited for the train that would take them to Cambridge for their summer holiday. Lucy yawned as her head fell to the left, resting on Harry's shoulder, and Harry was reminded of just how early they had to wake up to get to the station. Due to a ticketing mix-up, the train to Cambridge they were now booked on was due to leave London at 7 a.m., which meant that the trio had to leave Hendon at 4:30 to ensure they made it in time, having taken the train from Hendon to St. Pancras before taking a bus from Pancras Road to Liverpool Street, finally arriving at the platform and collapsing into a bench seat to wait. Finally, after 15 minutes waiting, the guard allowed passengers to board the train and the trio took their seats, Harry taking the window seat with Lucy sitting beside him, resulting in Edmund making very mature kissy faces as he so often did when around Harry and Lucy together. Harry and Lucy glanced at each other at this, then poked air tongue out at Edmund in unison. How sweet! They even synchronized their comebacks, Edmund joked as he took the seat opposite them in the compartment. Location: Cambridge Railway Station, Cambridge, Cambridgeshire, England, Earth. Time: July 1942 CE. Lucy, Harry and Edmund stepped off the train in Cambridge and made their way to the station entrance. But Lucy and Edmund were dismayed to see that Harold had brought Eustace when he came to pick them up. Eustace and Edmund were immediately at each other's throats about anything and everything. After a very tedious 15-minute walk, the trio were able to escape upstairs. Harry and Lucy both had rooms to themselves, albeit the two smallest in the house, as Lucy was of course the only girl, and Alberta did not want her Eustace sharing his room with a strange boy, and so Edmund was the unlucky one to have to share with Eustace. Warning: this chapter contains spoilers for the Chronicles of Narnia. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by Fox and Walden Media and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. Chapter 2, Voyage to World's End. Once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen. May your wisdom grace us until the stars rain down from the heavens. Aslan, The Chronicles of Narnia. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Fox Walden Media. Location: Cambridge, Cambridgeshire, England, Earth. Time: August 1942 CE. Harry, Lucy, and Edmund had been living at the Scrub household in Cambridge now for almost a month, and the three guests were continually doing all of the chores themselves. Harold always just seemed to sit there reading the paper. Alberta was always off with her friends somewhere, and Eustace, well, who knew what Eustace did? Something horrid, no doubt. Harry was lying back on his bed in the smallest of the house's 4 bedrooms, staring at the ceiling. Harry, Alberta asked Edmund and I to get some groceries today. Do you want to come too? Lucy asked her best friend from the door to his room, knowing full well that he would agree just so that he could escape from Eustace, who had been treating Harry like trash since they had arrived 2 weeks ago. Harry just nodded as he rapidly followed Lucy down the stairs, pulling on his shoes almost without stopping. Oh, not again, Lucy said, frustrated, before leading Harry to the register to pay for the groceries. As Lucy collected the change, she told Harry to go wait by the bikes while she went to find Edmund. 5 minutes later, Harry smirked as a smug Lucy led a thoroughly cowed Edmund over. The look on Edmund's face caused Harry to start laughing. Shut up, Harry. You're supposed to be on my side here, Edmund groaned, but Harry just shook his head and put his arm around Lucy's shoulder. Lose, my friend. You've been teasing me all year, and she's better looking than you are, Harry replied as Lucy blushed slightly, poking her tongue out at Ed, whose extremely mature comeback was to simply make kissy faces. Again. Come on then, Lucy said with a smile as she grabbed the handlebars of the bike they were using to help them carry the groceries back to the Scrub household. Harry was back in his room, easily the smallest of the house's 4 bedrooms, and he could faintly hear Lucy berating her uncle, and then Eustace before Ed. It's from Sue, followed by 2 sets of footsteps up the stairs towards Lucy's room. Lucy did poke her head into Harry's room as she passed and gestured him to follow. Come on, Harry. You can escape Eustace for a while with us. Harry smiled and followed his best friend. As he entered the room, he could already hear Lucy reading the letter out loud. Lucy and Edmund had sat on the bed, so Harry took the wooden back chair that was against the wall opposite the bed. Harry didn't really listen to the newsy items in Susan's letter, but one sentence caught his attention. Please try to spend a little time with Edmund and not all of it with that boyfriend of yours, Lucy read out loud, whacking Edmund over the back of his head when he laughed about that before muttering something about going to kill Susan when she got back from America. Harry, however, had now taken to staring at the painting on the far wall of the small bedroom. It was a painting of an old sailing ship with a dragonhead prow and a purple sail in the midst of a stormy sea. Lou, I really love that painting there. It must be the only piece of art in this whole house, Harry noted as he moved closer. Yes, it is, isn't it? It's very Narnian looking if you ask me, Lucy replied with a wistful sigh as she joined Harry and walked over to it. She really missed Narnia. What do you think, Ed? Edmund also stood to get a closer look. Yeah, it looks almost like the sea is moving. Then Eustace blundered in and started whining about Lucy, Edmund and Harry having to stay at his house, and conversation between he and Edmund quickly turned argumentative. Lucy and Harry, meanwhile, continued to watch the painting, and both stole a quick glance and secret smile when they realized that the sea was actually moving. Soon sea spray was flying out of the painting, covering Harry and Lucy in water droplets. Gradually more and more water trickled, and then flowed out of the painting, and when Eustace lifted the painting off the wall to try and smash it, the water poured out of the painting, and soon Lucy's bedroom was filled knee-deep with water, and the level was rapidly rising. Very quickly the water level had risen above their heads and the bedroom had faded out of existence. Location: aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere southwest of the Lone Islands, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. The four young children now found themselves some 10 meters underwater in the middle of the ocean. Lucy, Edmund, and Eustace looked to be struggling slightly without oxygen, but Harry knew he would be fine for maybe another 20 minutes thanks to his respiratory bypass, and that was more than they would need. Harry gave Edmund and Eustace a hard push, and they both gradually rose to the surface before he helped Lucy upwards. Once they got to the surface, Lucy and Edmund were the easy ones, as all Narnians could swim, but Harry had to push Eustace back up twice. Then he and Edmund had to fight to stop Eustace from thrashing while swimming out of the way of the ship that was now bearing down on them. Harry vaguely noticed 3 splashes as crew members of the ship dived into the water to help them, and then he heard Lucy's excited voice as she recognized the man nearest her. "That's a Caspian." A few short minutes later, the 7 were back on board the ship, wrapped in blankets, and Harry was being introduced to Caspian. "Your Majesty," Harry bowed. "Queen Lucy has told me much about her last visit to Narnia." "No need to bow, Harry. Any friend of Lucy and Edmund's is a friend of mine. Although from what I heard about you from Lucy last time she was here, maybe it's not just friend," Caspian joked, raising his eyebrow, and the 3 boys laughed as Lucy whacked Caspian's arm as she admonished him. "Get that stinking thing off of me." Eustace suddenly screeched near the stairs to the forecastle as the Narnian monarchs, and Harry turned to see a large mouse bounding off of Eustace and heading towards them. Harry spoke first as he bowed to the noble and valiant mouse. "You must be the valiant Sir Reepicheep, Knight of Narnia." "Indeed I am, and it is a pleasure to meet you." "Am I to assume that you are Lucy's beau, the famous Harry?" Reepicheep added with a toothy grin. "Harry is not my beau," Lucy said in frustration, stamping her foot, although the blush and something else in her eyes were quite evident to everyone. "Hello, Reepicheep," Lucy added then with a smile. Harry moved aside so that Edmund and Lucy could greet their friend. "Your Majesties, nothing except your humble presence was lacking from this noble endeavor of ours," Reepicheep said as he removed the feather-adorned ring from his head, sweeping into an elegant bow. "Hello, Reep. It's good to see you," Edmund said with a friendly smile. Caspian now moved to the stairs towards the poop deck, and standing on a stair about halfway up, he announced to the crew, "Crew, behold our castaways, Edmund the Just and Lucy the Valiant, High King and Queen of Narnia, and their friend Harry, who, Lucy says, is not her beau." Caspian said the last as a joke, and all the crew laughed, and laughed even harder when Lucy stomped her foot and glared evilly at Caspian once more before joining in the laughter as well. Harry finally breathed a sigh of relief as he finished pulling on the dry clothes that he had been handed by Caspian when he showed Lucy the cabin she would be using. He glanced down at the clothes: slightly baggy pants, a baggy-sleeved tunic, and a Narnian red vest with ornate patterning embroidered in gold. A leather belt held the 2 big pants up, and another thick brown leather belt ensured that he was not completely swimming in the clothes. The shoes he had been offered, a spare pair of somebody's sea boots, were too big for him, so he decided to go barefoot. He stepped out from the changing area, and he followed Edmund and Caspian up to the port-aft cabin. There he met Captain Drinian, and after a thorough accounting of both the voyage of this ship he learnt was called the Dawn Treader, but also of how he, Lucy, Edmund, and Eustace came to be in Narnia, including Harry's part in pushing them to the surface, he found himself being knighted by Caspian in recognition of saving the High King and Queen. He could still barely believe it even as Caspian finished the age-old ritual with, "Rise, Sir Harry Lionheart, Knight of Narnia." Location: aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere east of the Lone Islands, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. The Dawn Treader rocked violently from side to side, pitching up and down as it climbed massive waves only to fall down the other side. The ship had left Narrow Haven, the fishing port located on Dorne, the largest of the Lone Islands, just 6 days earlier, and were now in the middle of the largest storm any of the crew had ever seen. "For spokes to port," Captain Drinian yelled above the tempest as he, Caspian, and Harry worked hard to steer the ship against the might of the waves. "Harry!" Caspian yelled. You better get down below, get some sleep. You've been working harder than anyone expected you to. Go, Caspian added as Harry looked rebelliously at the King of Narnia. Harry nodded and stumbled down from the poop deck and into the corridor leading to the various cabins. As he swayed down the corridor, he heard the sounds of sobbing coming from the cabin normally reserved for Caspian, which he knew was now occupied by Lucy. Tentatively, he pushed the door open, and looking around the room, he found Lucy. She was sitting under the window, her back hard up against the wall, and his heart broke as he caught sight of her face, tears streaking down and marring her pretty face, her legs pulled up against her chest. Harry cautiously walked over to his best friend and slowly sat down beside her, his arm pulling her closer, allowing her to draw comfort from him. Lucy buried her head in his shoulder and she continued to sob, her arms now wrapped around the neck of her best and dearest friend. After several minutes, Lucy's sobs gradually abated and were replaced by sniffles before Lucy finally spoke. "Oh, Harry, I'm so sorry I cried on you. You must think me a right old sook." "Never, Lou. You're scared of storms, aren't you?" Harry asked. Lucy's answer was a squeal at the next clap of thunder, burying her face into his shoulder once more, nodding against it. "That's not all, is it though?" "No, it isn't," Lucy admitted softly. I was thinking about the Lone Islands." "Oh," Harry realized. "Do you want to talk about it?" Harry then asked quietly. Flashback. Location: the Isle of Felamath, the Lone Islands, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. The Dawn Treacherous longboat ran aground on the wide southwestern beach of Felamath, and the three monarchs of Narnia, along with Harry, Eustace, and the valiant mouse Reepicheep, stepped out onto the sand, and as the longboat was rowed back towards the ship, the group set off across the beach towards the wide pastures of the island. They came to the top of the ridge on the west of Felamath, which overlooked the whole of the Lone Islands, and Lucy clapped excitedly, seeing the familiarity of the archipelago. "Same old Dorne, same old Avra," she said with a smile. "Wait, who's that down there?" Edmund asked, looking down from the ridge to a group of 6 or 7 armed men, sitting by a tree at the bottom of the valley. "I don't know," Caspian said, "but we mustn't tell them who we are." "I agree," Lucy affirmed immediately. "Pray, why not, your majesties?" Reepicheep asked from his perch on Lucy's shoulder. "Because we have no way of knowing whether the Lone Islanders still recognize, or even acknowledge, our overlordship." The strange group made their way down the valley, and despite trying to avoid a conversation of any sort with the group, they were soon set upon, and after a short sword fight in which Lucy surprised everyone present with her ability with a sword, taking down 2 of the men on her own before the leader, Pug, brought the fight to an end with a short dagger held to Eustace's throat, all were captured. Now, everyone just calm down and none of you will get hurt." The slave traders bundled the captives down to a small jetty by an inn on the western shore of Felamath, where they were accosted by a well-groomed man carrying an ornate Narnian sword. "Well, Pug, how much for this one?" the man asked as he placed his hand on Caspian's shoulder. "And don't give me any of the filthy rigmarole of your insidious trade," he barked as Pug started a long-winded sales pitch. 300 crescents for you, my lord," Pug replied, a Calormene crescent, the currency used in the Lone Islands, being equal to a Narnian lion, which is equal to about 30 modern pence, or as Lucy and Edmund would know it, approximately 6 shillings. 300? The man asked with contempt. "I'll give you 150. The deal done. Caspian was dragged away by his new master even as Lucy near screamed out, "Please don't separate us." But the man could not afford more than 1 slave, and so the others were shoved into the small boat against the jetty, and the short journey across to Narrow Haven began. Harry and Lucy awoke to find themselves chained side by side to a wall against the side of the market square in the center of Narrow Haven. The next day, market day, both 10-year-olds were dragged up onto a stage in the center of the square, and the bidding on various slaves began, until it was time for Lucy to be sold. Harry watched in barely controlled anger as Tax, the bulliest of the slave traders, dragged Lucy to center stage and Pug started taking bids. "Do I hear 80 credits for this pretty little lady? Perfect company on those lonely nights away from home?" Pug said in sickly sweet voice. 90? Do I hear 100? The bidding went on for several minutes. 350 credits? Sold. Thank you very much, sir. Pug said as a sign reading sold was hung around Lucy's neck and she was dragged away to a hungry-looking Calormene Tarkin. Just minutes later, however, everyone in the square was forced to their knees as Caspian entered with Byrne, now Duke of the Lone Islands, and all slaves were ordered released, Lucy soon being wrapped in a group hug by Caspian, Edmund, and Harry. Location: aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere east of the Lone Islands, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. It's all over now, Lou. Harry whispered consolingly as the last few tears leaked out of Lucy's eyes to be soaked up by Harry's tunic, and he rubbed her back soothingly. You're safe here. Location: aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere east of Deathwater Island, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. The Dawn Treader continued its eastward journey now, but the ship was just a shadow of what it had been when it had sailed from Cair Paravel over a month ago. The mast now lost somewhere behind them during a storm, a scrap of the sail now held up by the jury mast, that is the bowsprit lashed to the stump of the mainmast. They were now sailing as best they could towards an island on the horizon, searching for a place where they might find more provisions and possibly to rest for a week or so. Down below, Harry and Lucy were lounging against the headboard of the luxurious double bed in the royal cabin Lucy currently occupied, reminiscing about the last week and a half of the voyage since they had lost the mast and the Dragonhead prow. In that time, they had come across a volcanic island, and while exploring, discovered that Eustace had been transformed into a dragon. After several days on the island, Eustace had an encounter with the great lion Aslan and was changed back into a boy, albeit a much changed and polite boy. Shortly afterwards they had had a disastrous encounter with a sea serpent, which had tried to crush the ship but had been foiled by the brilliance of Riepicheep, who encouraged the crew to push the loop of the serpent's body off the back of the ship so that the Dawn Treader might sail free. Several days later, the Dawn Treader anchored in a sheltered cove on a small island, and a small party made up of Caspian, Eustace, Harry, Edmund, and Lucy set out to explore the island. As the remainder of the crew took on board fresh water and some small fruits and berries as provisions, the explorers struck inland and uphill until they found another stream on the far side of the island. Following it downhill, they took a moment to rest when Edmund sat down, inadvertently placing his hand amongst the heather before giving a shout of pain and pulling his hand back, showing a cut shining with blood. A drop or two from Lucy's magical cordial soon healed the wound, and Edmund searched the heather to find an old rusted Narnia sword, and with Caspian's help also extricated a large shield with the arms of the Lord Restamar emblazoned upon it. After further searching, the group came across a cave which held within it a shallow pool. The explorers all crowded around the pool and could see within it a statue made of pure gold. After testing the water with a sprig of heather, which instantly turned to gold, both Caspian and Edmund became bewitched by the island. You know, Harry, Lucy said during their reminiscence, I truly believe that had I not stepped between them, and had Aslan not appeared, that Edmund and Caspian might have killed each other. I believe you're right, Lou. Harry agreed thoughtfully. After all, they were completely drunk on the power that the island could give them, which is exactly why Deathwater Island is the best name for it. Loch Atton. Aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere south of Coriacan's Island, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. Are you okay, Lou? Harry asked softly as Lucy stood in front of the hammock that he occupied while Caspian and Edmund looked on. She shook her head and near whispered, I can't sleep, before turning around and running back out of the cabin. Both Caspian and Edmund made to go after her, but Harry said that he would talk to her. Harry made his way out onto deck searching for Lucy. His search led him back below deck and into Lucy's cabin, eventually finding her on the small balcony astern of her cabin, singing softly to herself. He gave us eyes to see them, and lips that we might tell, how great is God Almighty, who has made all things well, all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Harry recognized the words of the hymn, All Things Bright and Beautiful, and smiled at Lucy's beautiful singing voice as he moved to stand next to her, finding her face tear-streaked once again. What's the matter, Lou? Harry asked as he placed his hand over hers, joining her in staring out over the moonlit ocean. I was thinking about what happened on Karayakin's island, Lucy replied, still looking out over the ocean. Not just what you all know, that I had to make the Dufflepuds visible, but something that none of you know. She continued, launching into her story. Flashback. Location: Karayakin's Island, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. Lucy stepped into the mansion and started climbing the staircase, trying her hardest to control her fear. Every creak of a floorboard seemed to betray someone or something in the shadows. Every shadow seemed to move. Slowly she made her way upwards and then along the first floor corridor towards the room at the end, the room where she could already see the book she required sitting on a lectern in the middle of the room. She turned the pages past the spell to make it snow and soon came across a spell which she found of great interest. The page was ornately decorated in the style of an illuminated manuscript, but it was the title of the spell that really caught Lucy's attention. The spell to make you beautiful. Now, Lucy's family had always unwittingly made Lucy feel plain in comparison to her sister Susan, and so she immediately read through the words of the spell, and moving over to the mirror she recited the magic words. Transform my reflection, lashes, lips and complexion. Make me she, whom I'd agree, holds more beauty over me. Immediately, she saw her face changing shape and soon. There in the mirror she took on the appearance of Susan. Not knowing why, she pushed open the mirror, for it was now a door, and found herself at a party in America, accompanied by both Peter and Edmund, who, calling her Susan, had no recollection of having a younger sister by the name of Lucy. Peter, Edmund, I want to go back to Narnia. I want to see Harry, she said desperately, but neither brother knew of Harry or Narnia. Lucy instantaneously found herself back in Karayakin's library, and she recited the spell to make things visible only to find Aslan fading into sight. You doubt your value, child? Aslan asked, but continued without waiting for an answer. Your brothers and sister would not know Narnia, or Harry, without you, dear one, nor would they know me. Remember that there are those who find you beautiful just as you are. I'm so sorry, Aslan. I would never want all that. But who would find me beautiful? Lucy apologized profusely to the great lion. No one is told what would have happened, and no one is told any story other than their own. Dear one, Aslan told the girl, don't doubt your value, and don't run from who you are. Now come, and you shall meet Karayakin. Aslan finished, leading the girl back out into the hall of the now bright mansion. Loch Atton. Aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere south of Karayakin's Island, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. Why do you put yourself down, Lucy? Harry asked after she finished her story. Aslan is right when he said there are those who think you beautiful as you are right now. But where am I going to find someone who thinks that I am more beautiful than Susan? She asked, never looking away from the calm water. Harry pulled her arm gently, turning her to face him and then into a warm embrace. He gently kissed her hair and then whispered in her ear, right here, me. Right in that moment, Lucy felt beautiful, under the Narnian moon in the arms of her best friend. Location: aboard the Dawn Treader, somewhere southeast of Ramandu's Island, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. Harry and Lucy sat side by side against the wall of the starboard stern cabin. Lucy had been assigned when they found their way into Narnia. Harry's arm rested loosely but protectively across Lucy's shoulder, and her head rested against Harry's shoulder. Harry and Lucy had comforted each other after the defeat of the Dark Island, which had brought their worst nightmares to life. After the island had disappeared, the Dawn Treader continued eastward to Ramandu's Island after rescuing Lord Roop. At Ramandu's Island, the crew of the Dawn Treader were introduced to the retired Star Ramandu and his half-star daughter Liliandil. Ramandu and Liliandil explained to the travelers the plight of the remaining lords, Argaz, Revilian and Mavermorn, and how it could be remedied by traveling to World's End and leaving at least one of their number behind. Lucy had watched the male crew members curiously as many of the unmarried ones, including the two kings, Caspian and Edmund, seemed to be tripping over themselves in the presence of Liliandil. Lucy also noticed that neither Drinian nor Harry were acting the same, and that Harry came up behind her, looking almost adoringly at her from over her shoulder, Drinian merely looking at them knowingly. Now, as the Dawn Treader sailed ever closer to World's End and the Last Sea, neither Harry or Lucy had any need to be up on deck, and so they found themselves in their usual position, sitting side by side in Lucy's cabin, both of them somewhat melancholy, knowing that their time in Narnia would reach its end as the Dawn Treader reached the end of the world. "We'll be leaving Narnia soon," Lucy said with a sad sigh. "Yeah, I really enjoyed it here," Harry agreed. "I'll miss it so much, and I'll find it hard to be back in England where it feels less magical. What I'll find hardest," Lucy confided, "is going from Narnia, where I am Lucy the Valiant, Aslan's dear one and one of the greatest queens in history, back to England where I am Lucy Pevensey, the little unpopular girl with her head in the clouds." "You will always be a queen," Harry told her. "In here," he added, pointing to her heart as she cuddled closer to him. "And you'll always be my friend. Always." Location: World's End, The Last Sea, Great Eastern Ocean, Narnia. Time: 2306 New York. After several months of voyaging across the Great Eastern Ocean, the Dawn Treader had finally reached the Lily Lake of the Last Sea. Now Harry, Lucy, Edmund, Eustace, Caspian, and Reepicheep had rowed across the Lily Lake to World's End, the last single strip of land before Aslan's country. There before them rose a wave of water, flowing upwards and over the crest into Aslan's country. Eustace was the first to notice when, away to their right, Aslan made his appearance. Minutes later, and the group had said a tearful goodbye to Reepicheep, who eschewed his rapier before ascending the wave into Aslan's country. And then it was time for Edmund, Eustace, Harry, and Lucy to say goodbye. As Aslan informed them that it was time to go home, Lucy, with a pained look on her face, asked, "We're not coming back again, are we?" Aslan looked almost lovingly at the girl well known in Narnia as Aslan's dear one, and said exactly what she didn't expect him to say. "I do not know, dear one. I didn't expect you to be needed after this, but with young Harry coming with you, I do not know just what Harry has told you about himself. I already know that he is a Time Lord. We tell each other everything," Lucy said in reply to the unasked question, pointedly ignoring her immature sibling, adopted sibling and cousin. "Very well then," Aslan continued with a smile. "With Harry being here, time is in flux, so you may well come back, but nothing is set in stone, and you should know that I have another name in your world, and you should learn to know me by it. Oh, and Harry, my son, do say hello to the doctor for me." "Yes, Aslan," Harry answered, before the four made their tearful goodbyes, grasping each other's hand as they walked towards the hole that Aslan had created in the wave. And soon the water collapsed around them, and they were making their way back to the surface, where they found themselves back in Lucy's room, scarce seconds after they had left. Location: King's Parade, Cambridge, Cambridgeshire, England, Earth. Time: August 1942 CE. Lucy cried quietly as she hugged her best friend tightly. "I'm gonna miss talking to you every day," she told him sadly. "There now, Lou. Just think, in just 2 weeks you'll be back at St. Finbarr's and I'll be back at Hendon House. You'll see me again. Just 2 weeks. I promise," Harry said as they stood in front of the TARDIS standing on a street corner on King's Parade. "We have to go, Harry," the doctor said, poking his head out the door. Harry nodded, and hugging Lucy one last time, he waved to her and stepped into the TARDIS, his last sight of Lucy waving, still teary-eyed as he shut the door. Lucy remained standing on the corner for several moments, watching as the TARDIS faded from sight, before she turned and headed back to the house, bracing herself for the teasing from Edmund and a now nice Eustace. Chapter 3: Prince of the Realm. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Bloomsbury. Location: Charing Cross Road, London, England, Earth. Time: August 1990 CE. Just south of Cambridge Circus on Charing Cross Road, the hustle and bustle of one of London's busiest shopping streets was punctuated by the wheezing and groaning of the universe as the dimensions were pushed apart slightly to allow a TARDIS, still disguised as a police public call box to materialize in the middle of the footpath. As far as the Muggles were concerned, this was simply some cheap trick, that is assuming they were observant enough to notice it in the first place. Let's see. It's 1990, excellent, By the smell and smog I'd say London, perfect. Now! The doctor trailed off looking thoughtful. Where's that damn pub? In the corner of my eye. Aha! The doctor strode triumphantly towards what seemed to Amy and Rory to be a blank wall between two shops. Perception filter. Doctor? Amy asked, having seen enough of them in their time with the doctor. The doctor nodded absently, as he guided the youngest of their crew, Harry Potter, towards the leaky cauldron, the gateway between the wizarding and Muggle worlds. As they entered the pub, Harry was thankful for his protective entourage as he was mobbed by wizards and witches all wanting a look at the famous boy who lived. Amy and Rory quickly shepherded Harry out towards where the doctor had pointed out Diagon Alley. Using his sonic screwdriver, the doctor opened the gateway and the strange congregation of an adult and juvenile Time Lord and two adult Muggles strode proudly into the wizarding world, gazing at the sights in much the way a tourist would, as they moved down the alley to Gringotts, the wizarding bank. After entering the bank, Amy thought to herself how much Gringotts was like Venice, especially the House of Calvieri. Meanwhile, the doctor strode purposefully towards a goblin teller. Mr. Harry Potter wishes to claim his inheritance and heritage. Eminent goblin, recited the doctor. Used to dealing with proud alien races, the culture of the goblins was easy to follow. And is Mr. Potter prepared for these tests? The goblin said, peering down on the young Time Lord. And does he have his trust key for additional identification? The doctor began scrabbling around in his dimensionally transcendental pockets, depositing random items on the counter, muttering, "Damn key, it's in here somewhere. Ugh, no, that's saliva." Here he pulled his hand out momentarily and wiped it on Rory's jacket, still got the marks of Balhoun's gift. Jabe's grandfather. Arrow from an Elizabethan archer. Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Been looking for that, here it is. The key to Gringotts Vault 687. Should have known it was there. He placed the key in front of the goblin, who inspected it carefully, making sure it was in order, while the assembled party simply shook their heads at the doctor. "Yes, this seems to be in order," the goblin said, baring his needle-sharp teeth. "Griphook, you will escort this party to the inheritance department," he barked, and when the goblin had made his way over, whispered in his ear, "You know who Mr. Potter is. Send for Her Majesty. She wanted to be here." Griphook nodded and escorted the group away from the main banking hall. Location: Gringotts headquarters beneath London, England, Earth. Time: August 1990 CE. The diminutive "you mustn't say that" to his face goblin Griphook led the strange congregation deeper into the bowels of Gringotts until he came to a door which had a bronze plaque engraved with the words Stronghammer Bloodaxe, Inheritance and Rituals in both English and gobbledygook. Griphook pushed the door open and ushered the group inside, directing them to seats and offering refreshments before taking his leave. "Stronghammer will be here momentarily, but I have other urgent matters I must attend to. Good day," the goblin said as he backed out the door. About 2 minutes after Griphook left, another slightly taller goblin entered the office carrying several different colored folders. One deep maroon, one royal blue, and the third emerald green. He placed the 3 folders on his desk before greeting the group. "Honorable Lord Doctor, Honorable Mr. Potter, Honorable Mr. and Mrs. Pond," Stronghammer said with a smirk and a very ungoblin-like wink. "I understand Mr. Potter here would like to claim his inheritance?" "Yes, Honorable Master Stronghammer," Harry replied respectfully. "Excellent. We will start with this form here," Stronghammer said as he removed a form from the maroon folder and placed it in front of Harry. "This one is quite easy. Simply place your thumb in the central square, and it will take a blood sample which will allow us to verify your identity." Harry did as he was asked and felt a dull prick in the center of the pad of his thumb before the pain faded away instantly. "That form," Stronghammer started to explain as he returned the form to the folder and removed a wad of parchment, "allows us to learn who your birth parents are, thus allowing us to ensure all the titles due you are received." Here, Stronghammer reached for the first piece of parchment, laying it down in front of Harry. "This document is the letters patent which name a Mark Evans, of Little Whinging in Surrey, appointed by Her Majesty the Queen as godmother of her youngest daughter, the Princess Lily, as Baron Evans of Little Whinging. The letters further stipulate that in the event of Mark Evans not bearing a son, the barony would pass to the eldest son of Princess Lily. He explained. He then reached for the second, third, fourth and fifth documents in the pile. Now these are the interesting documents. This first one is a Muggle newspaper clipping of the wedding announcement of Her Royal Highness the Princess Lily and His Grace James, Duke of Gryffindor, Marquis Potter. The second is another letters patent bestowing the style of Royal Highness, and the subsidiary title Earl of Monmouth on James. The third is the birth announcement for Harold James Charles Louis Potter Windsor, Marquis Potter, and the fourth and most crucial of all is a copy of the letters patent signed by Queen Elizabeth II bestowing the titular dignity of Prince or Princess of the United Kingdom on any child of Princess Lily and entitling them to the same style as the son of the sovereign. Harry just sat dumbstruck, looking to the doctor, who nodded to tell him it was true, as Stronghammer returned the documents to the red folder before removing one last form from it. Now lastly, for this folder, this form is a Wizengamot claim form. It has already been magically filled in. All that is required is for you sign and place your thumb in the adjacent square, and I will be able to present you with your family rings. Stronghammer informed Harry, who picked up the quill and signed his name before pressing his thumb in the square as directed. After the magic on the form had taken, Stronghammer removed a box from his desk. Opening it, inside were 5 rings. These 5 rings represent your headships and your magical relation to the crown. Place all 5 rings on the same finger and they will merge with the senior Gryffindor ring visible. These rings are the head of the houses of Gryffindor, Potter, Peverell, Evans and the ring for the crown. The Peverell claim being yours because the Potters hold the only eligible claim presently. As the rings merged together, Stronghammer told Harry of his new title and style. Congratulations, Your Highness. As of your acceptance of the titles, you have reclaimed your full title as His Royal Highness Prince Harold James, Duke of Gryffindor, Marquis Potter and Peverell, Earl of Monmouth, Baron Evans. Here the meeting was temporarily interrupted as Griphook entered the office and whispered frantically in Stronghammer's ear. He nodded to Griphook as he spoke commandingly. Send them in. Griphook returned to the door and standing beside it announced in his most powerful voice, presenting Her Majesty Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, and His Most Eminent Majesty Ragnarok, Clan Chief of the Greater London Goblins and High Emperor of the Goblins of the Commonwealth. All the room's occupants took a knee before the most powerful woman and the most powerful goblin in the world. You may rise, Queen Elizabeth said diplomatically before she approached the doctor and opened her arms for a hug. Doctor, you've changed again. 11th this time. Yes, it is, Your Majesty. These are my companions, Amy Pond and Rory Williams, and this is your grandson, Harry. The doctor introduced everyone to the Queen as Amy and Rory just stood shocked at the level of familiarity between their friend and their sovereign. Ah, young Harry. You must forgive me, we have another Prince Harry, as you know. Might we be able to call you Prince James? The Queen asked her grandson who she had just been reunited with. I'm sure I could get used to that, Your Majesty, Harry said, erring on the side of formality. Oh come now, James, we're family now. Please call me Grandmum, all the other grandkids do. I must dash. I have many things to do before tonight. Please, you are all invited to the palace for dinner. And you, Harry, can meet the rest of the family. The Queen waited for them all to agree before she bid farewell to the 3 goblins and swept out of the office. Harry then turned to look at the Goblin Emperor, and using all his courage and all the etiquette lessons the doctor had given him, he began to speak in fluent gobbledygook. Del greetings to your most eminent majesty. Many apologies for not greeting you properly, and with haste. Del. I appreciate the sentiment, Your Highness, but your Muggle friends there would benefit more if we conversed in English. I am merely here to see how your magical abilities test goes, and then Stronghammer will present you with your family tree. I would also like to extend to you the honor that your grandmother and both parents held. I would like for you to call me Ragnarok, and to consider yourself a goblin friend. Ragnarok replied in English in his deep booming voice with a distinct received pronunciation accent. It would be my honor, Ragnarok, Harry said as he swept into a bow. Very good, now before you undertake the next test, I suggest at some point in the next year you learn how the Wisnigamote works. After all, you are the holder of the fourth oldest seat, and it would not do for you to not uphold the Wisnigamote's charter and traditions, Ragnarok said, and Harry nodded, before Stronghammer lifted up the next two folders. First he pulled the only sheet of parchment out of the emerald green folder. This one is quite simple. Once again press your thumb into the square, and we wait a few minutes and you will have your family tree. Stronghammer watched as Harry did as instructed, before he picked up the parchment and placed it securely back in its green folder before placing it aside. Now, same procedure for this one, which will print a list of your magical abilities below. Once again Harry pressed his thumb into the square, and list instantly appeared on the parchment below. Harold James Charles Lewis, Duke of Gryffindor. Age 10. Family houses: Gryffindor, Potter, Peverell, Evans, Black Windsor. Head of Gryffindor, Potter, Peverell and Evans houses. Heir presumptive to House Black. Minor member of House Windsor. Magical abilities: Time Magic, Natural Acclumens Legilimens Animagus Lion. Magical languages miscellaneous. Prophecy. See attached note. Destiny bond with Lucy H. Pevensey formed September 17, 1941. Soul bond with Lucy H. Pevensey pending. The doctor smiled as he saw the magical abilities list. While there wasn't many there, 3 of the 4 were the exact abilities he would expect a Time Lord to exhibit. The Destiny and Soul bonds intrigued him, especially because it formed some 49 years ago when Harry was 8. Stronghammer turned the sheet around so he could read it and explain some of the information to the doctor and his young ward, but it seemed that all that needed to be explained was the 3 miscellaneous items. Your Highness, Dr. Mr. and Mrs. Pond. Stronghammer started his explanation with another smirk as the male muggle started spluttering again. I'll start with these 2 bonds. We goblins have long been time-sensitive, but to a much greater degree than wizards believe we are. We have seen through time that the bond between Harry here and this Lucy is one of the strongest since the bond between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, if not the strongest, and this is before we can even be sure it will ever develop into a full soul bond. For some reason, despite the 50 years difference in home times, something very strong is pulling these 2 together. The doctor nodded as he thought about the great lion Aslan, a being he had met almost as many times as the Queen or Winston Churchill. Only someone like Aslan could bind 2 people so closely together across timelines. Stronghammer then removed 2 sheets of parchment from the blue folder and placed them on the desk on top of the abilities test. This is the prophecy in full, but before you read that, I suggest, Doctor, that you read this letter first, which we found while performing an audit of the Gryffindor vault. Stronghammer handed the smaller of the 2 sheets to the older Time Lord. The doctor's face morphed through various degrees of shock, amazement, and happiness as he read the note on the parchment written in a messy scrawl. Theta, if I have timed this letter right, you are receiving it in 1990, some 19 years before, and yet after relatively I helped you see off Rassilon and Gallifrey. I wish you to know that I have reformed, and due to some strange force, which I have learnt is known as magic, I found myself lying in a field in Wales in the year 965. I soon found myself making friends with Salazar Slytherin, Helga Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw. I took the name Godric Gryffindor and started a magic school with these 3, and I later married Rowena, and we had 3 children together. Through some luck, your acquaintance Jack Harkness happened upon me in the year 1056, and after some coaxing, I convinced him to transport me to the 1980s. I have since taken the name Archibald Griffin, and I am now teaching at the school I helped to found. I have done research and found that Harry is a Time Lord because he is descended from my only daughter and eldest child Helena Jane, 2nd Duchess of Ravenclaw through his mother's father's side, and my youngest son, Edmund Charles, 4th Duke of Gryffindor through his father's side. I look forward to seeing you and my many greats grandson at Hogwarts next year. The letter was signed in a flourish with the word Kashii. I should have known. The doctor muttered before picking up the other parchment and reading the prophecy. Prince by blood and prince by bond will lead the 9. A raven, 3 badgers, 3 snakes, 2 lions. 9 together, their banners unfurled, all together, to lead their world. United they stand, backs to the wall, they must succeed or the mighty rock shall fall. Master Stronghammer, your eminent majesty, May I ask who made this prophecy? Harry asked after allowed him to read it. The Ud Sigma. Ragnarok replied in his booming voice. So it's probably true then, Harry said deadpanned. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: August 1990 CE. Harry was still hard-pressed to believe that Buckingham Palace was, as the Queen Grandmum put it, his home. It had been almost a week since that trip to Gringotts, and in that time he had met just about every member of his family, titled and untitled, and most of the royal household staff as well. He very quickly had to admit that one of his favorite adult royals, aside from his grandmum of course, was the Princess of Wales, or as she insisted he call her, Auntie D. She seemed to be one of the most inclined to treat him more adult, even when he was at the time playing with her kids William and Henry, or Harry as everyone called him. The black-haired prince also enjoyed spending time with his uncle Andrew, who was his mother's twin brother and had been good friends with his father, and he would listen rapt for hours as Andrew would tell him about his parents' antics. James, as all the royal family called him, spent a lot of time with all the young royals, going for horse rides under the supervision of his aunt, and Princess Royal riding one of the Queen's mares Lucy while being accompanied by Zara, and's daughter riding Burmese, the Queen's personal horse. Over the month he spent living with the royal family, Harry or James quickly fell in love with most aspects of the royal lifestyle, but try as he might, there was one he just could not reconcile with. The doctor had explained to him that he was famous in the wizarding world, and he had seen that at the Leaky Cauldron, but being a prince and famous in the Muggle world too, that was difficult. He first joined his grandmum in a few small appearances, nothing too media-centered, a school visit or two, a church fundraiser in Godric's Hollow, the town where Gryffindor Castle, Harry's castle, was located, and a visit to Carnarvon Castle alongside his eldest uncle, Charles, Prince of Wales. Chapter 4. Unexpected Reunion. A world where you and I belong, where faith and love will keep us strong. Exactly who we are is just enough. There's a place for us. Carrie Underwood. There's a place for us. The Chronicles of Narnia. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader soundtrack. Location: King's Parade, Cambridge, Cambridgeshire, England, Earth. Time: August 1943 CE. It had been a year since Harry, Lucy, Edmund and Eustace had been sucked into Narnia, and although Harry was no longer there, having tearfully told Lucy at the end of the school year that it was time for him to go to school in his own time period, the three cousins still got along well, and were wandering down King's Parade in Cambridge, strolling past the famous King's College Gatehouse. It was still early in the morning, only about 8 o'clock, and fruit vans were rushing all over town, delivering their wares to various stalls and university colleges for the day. The boys, as usual, had been teasing Lucy about Harry, and she had poked her tongue out at them and stomped a few meters ahead, keeping that distance as she kept walking, conversing with them over her shoulder, getting so into her rebuttal of their comments that she didn't realize that she had walked out into the middle of the street. Nor did she notice the fruit van that had no time to brake as it smashed into the 11-year-old girl, knocking her to the ground as her brother and cousin screamed her name in anguish, running towards her as the driver hastily climbed out of his van and yelled for someone to call an ambulance. Lucy did not remember the hit, but she could feel the pain in her legs and chest, and she could taste the familiar coppery taste of blood in her mouth. Only Edmund and Eustace heard her soft moan of Aslan, before the light faded from her eyes and the darkness surrounded her. Location: Aslan's country. Time: 2307 New York. Lucy slowly opened her eyes as she sat up, blinking rapidly as she adjusted to the bright sunlight. She looked around and found she had been lying in the middle of a grassy meadow near a stream. She didn't want to believe she was in Narnia, or Aslan's country, until she saw the great lion himself moving towards her. The auburn-haired 11-year-old stumbled to her feet and somehow managed to tackle the great lion with a yell of Aslan, as she buried her face in his mane and listened to his deep baritone chuckle. After a few moments of hugging the lion, Lucy remembered the circumstances that led to her being here. "What happened to me, Aslan?" the girl asked curiously, and yet the lion could tell that she was dreading the answer. "Dear one, there is no easy way to say this, but you were killed in Cambridge when you were run over by a fruit van," Aslan informed the girl, who immediately began crying. But this abated slightly when Aslan spoke again. "However, the fates did not intend for you to die today, nor did my father. I can send you back to England, but fate demands you in a different place and time. I will provide you with all you need, and there will be someone to help you when you arrive." Before Lucy could ask what the great lion meant, she felt the pull of magic around her and just caught Aslan's voice before he faded out of sight. "Good luck, dear one. I shall see you soon enough." Location: King's Cross Railway Station, Camden Islington, London, England, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Lucy soon found herself sitting on a trunk outside the building containing platforms 9 and 10 at King's Cross, and though she instinctively knew that the trunk would contain everything she would need, even though she had no idea where she was going, she had been surprised to hear a soft meow and looked down to see a carry cage with a small ginger kitten inside along with a note that read, "I need a name." Even as she read the note, a ginger kitten belonging to Lucy was always going to be named Aslan, and she quickly noticed that the name tag on the carry cage now sported the word Aslan on it. "Lou!" A call from a voice she easily recognized had her quickly running into the arms of the raven-haired, bespectacled boy, whom she had known for years and become best friends with. Lucy stepped back and looked up, expecting to see the doctor there, but instead she was greeted by an old woman who looked to be in her 60s and a young woman with blonde hair and a radiant smile. The introduction Harry gave to Lucy of these two women nearly caused her to faint. "Lou, this is my grandmum, Queen Elizabeth II, and my Aunt Diana, Princess of Wales, although she much prefers Auntie D. Auntie, grandmum, this is Lucy Pevensey." While Lucy didn't know the royal family of the 1990s, she knew the royal family of the 1940s, and she recognized the Queen as the woman she had known in the papers as Princess Elizabeth. What surprised her most was that the Queen knew she was from 50 years ago, and that she had been a queen in Narnia, stating that she herself had even been there in the Golden Age. The Queen looked suddenly at the large railway clock hanging from the wall, relieved to see there was still an hour until the train departed, but still she ushered the two towards the wall of the building. "I know there is still an hour until the train is due to depart, but we should get you on the train now as it would not do to have large numbers of students seeing us here. Come along, James, Lucy." The Queen directed the two 11-year-olds to run through the wall in front of them, and they appeared on a platform that appeared straight out of the 1930s, complete with a scarlet steam locomotive. Shortly afterward, the Queen and Princess of Wales had hugged both children much to Lucy's surprise and left the platform. Harry and Lucy found a compartment near the back of the train, and the pair settled down and Harry asked Lucy the tough question, "How did you get here?" Harry watched despairingly as Lucy broke down crying and buried her head into his shoulder, hoping to draw some comfort from her best friend, and Harry instinctively wrapped his arm around her in a one-armed hug. Finally, after several minutes, Lucy began her tale. She told him much of what happened since they had last met before telling him of the fateful moment that she had stepped in front of a fruit van, and the subsequent trip to Aslan's country. There was less than 10 minutes before the train was due to leave King's Cross when Lucy finally blew her nose and wiped her eyes and resumed her bubbly self, getting Harry to explain the various things in her trunk as she rifled through it, before she released her ginger kitten from its carry cage, introducing Aslan to Harry, who smiled at the name and petted the soft kitten which curled up on Lucy's lap, purring contentedly. Location: Hogwarts Express, near Alexandra Palace Railway Station, Haringey, London, England, Earth. En route to Hogsmeade Village. Hogwarts Station time: September 1991 CE. Soon after the express left King's Cross, and as it was thundering along the East Coast Main Line passing through Alexandra Palace Station, two young girls, one sleek black-haired and the other a bushy-haired brunette, entered the compartment. The black-haired girl introduced herself as Daphne Greengrass, pureblood, while the brunette introduced herself as Hermione Granger, Muggleborn. Daphne, thankfully, did not seem to share the prejudices that Harry's grandmum had told him to expect from purebloods, nor did Tracy, Neville, and Susan, purebloods who had been friends of Daphne's since childhood. As the train continued thundering northwards, the group were soon joined by Hannah, the blonde-haired half-blood friend of Susan. The purebloods in the new friendship group became guarded when a sleek, blonde-haired boy named Draco Malfoy entered the compartment and asked to sit down. "I know your family, Malfoy," Daphne hissed. "Do you really want to sit in a compartment with two Muggleborns and a half-blood?" Considering who is actually in this compartment, Greengrass, I think my family would welcome me sitting here," Malfoy said as he took a seat. "Don't get me wrong, I think there are some families who are better than others, but you just have to read the updated edition of Nature's Nobility to know that Hannah Abbott here," he pointed at Hannah, who nodded slightly, "is heiress apparent to the Abbott earldom. Susan Bones is heiress apparent to the Bones Marquisate and Le Fay dukedom. Neville is the last eligible scion of the Longbottom Marquisate and Hufflepuff dukedom. Tracy, you are heiress to the Davis Viscountcy. Greengrass, you and I both know that you are heiress apparent to the Greengrass Marquisate and Slytherin dukedom. Potter there is already the holder of 4 house headships and 11th in line for the throne to boot. What none of you probably know is Miss Granger, I believe." Hermione nodded, looking imperiously at the boy. "Miss Granger is from a line of squibs and is the heiress and last confirmed scion of the Ravenclaw dukedom." By the time Malfoy had finished his monologue about why he had no problem sitting in the compartment, he offered his hand to each in turn, and after Harry shook his hand, all of the others did so in turn, and a very strange friendship group started. As the train passed through Muswell Hill, Lucy sighed, knowing that she was only a few miles from Finchley, where she had grown up. Hannah, being a half-blood, knew a bit about the Muggle world, and so was the first to ask Lucy a question. "So, Lucy, with that name, your parents must be Chronicles of Narnia fans?" Lucy stiffened slightly when asked this question, but when Harry whispered in her ear that she should tell the truth, she looked at him, and then with a sigh she said, "No, they aren't. I am that Lucy Pevensey." "Surely you can't be, though?" Hermione asked circumspectly. "She is," Harry rebuked. "You don't have to believe us if you don't want to. But I'm a time traveler. My guardian and I traveled to 1937, and I went to primary school with a young, cute," Lucy blushed at this, "auburn-haired girl by the name of Lucy Pevensey, later going to Hendon House, a boys' school in Hendon opposite St. Finbarr's Girls' School, where the young Lucy attended. After my guardian was unable to look after me one summer, I stayed with her, Edmund and their cousin Eustace in Cambridge, and we traveled, inadvertently, to Narnia, sailing on the Dawn Treader." "I believe you." Susan was the first one to say so, and shortly afterwards, all occupants of the compartment, Hermione begrudgingly, believed the story, especially when Harry offered to say so under Veritaserum. Thinking about Draco's earlier statements, Harry also produced 6 Wizengamot claim forms, saying that they could claim their seats if they wished, and that Hermione definitely should. Location: Headmaster's Office, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft Wizardry, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Albus Dumbledore, defeater of Gellert Grindelwald, Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot, Supreme Mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards and Headmaster of Hogwarts, sat in his office at the top of the Headmaster's Tower, still trying to organize history and Muggle Studies teachers. He had been forced to sack Quirinius Quirrell from the Muggle Studies post when the subject was revamped and extended to a sore subject from 1st through 5th year, and he had been able to hire Archibald Griffin as defense teacher, but noon for the other 2 posts. Looking through the list of candidates, the headmaster sighed. None of them were what he was looking for as a new professor. He was distracted from his notes by a grinding, groaning sound and by the large police public call box that materialized down the stairs slightly in his outer office, and by the strange tweed-clad man that exited the box accompanied by a redhead woman in a short skirt and a somewhat nerdy, yet strong-looking man. "Ah, Doctor. It is good to see you again," Albus said with a smile, standing from his desk and walking around it to clasp the hand of the 1,400-year-old Time Lord. "And you as well, Albus," the doctor replied, returning the handshake before gesturing to his companions. "This is Amy Pond and her husband Rory Williams, or as I prefer to call him, Rory the Roman. We're here to take the teaching positions you have available." "Ah, excellent. Doctor, you can take history? And Miss Pond and Mr. Williams, I assume, will be well qualified to teach Muggle studies?" Albus asked. Yes, I'll have to make sure the 3 of us don't include knowledge past 1991. But we can definitely take the jobs," the doctor replied. "Excellent. You will have to use the set books for now until we can get new materials delivered, but I'll make sure to have your offices and apartments set up tonight. All 3 of you will be required in the Great Hall for dinner tonight," Dumbledore explained as he welcomed the 3 new members of the Hogwarts faculty. The Mark of Sigma. Chapter 5. The Mark of Sigma. "Friendship is unnecessary," like philosophy, like art, it has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things that give value to survival. Says Jack Lewis, author of the Chronicles of Narnia. Location: Hogsmeade Railway Station, Hogsmeade, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. The Scarlet steam engine pulling the Hogwarts Express slowly pulled into the platform at the small station nestled in a forest in Scotland's far north, far away from any known Muggle settlements. As the train came to a stop, the train's guard stepped down and immediately started moving along the platform, opening the doors of each carriage, nodding to the solitary member of staff at the almost never-used station. The small station building was lit up by several Edwardian oil lampposts along the length of the platform, the lamps casting a warm glow on the train. The group of new first years stepped down off the train onto the platform, watching as the older students made their way through a stone archway and up a cobblestone path towards a row of carriages. A booming voice calling the first years over soon led them to a large man, who introduced himself as Hagrid and who soon led them up a well-worn stone path away from the station to an armada of small boats on the edge of a large inky black lake. "You'll be getting your first look at Hogwarts in a mo," Hagrid called from the boat he had to himself, and sure enough, Harry, Lucy, Hermione, and Daphne all let out sighs of awe as over the horizon the beautiful and inviting sight of a fairy-tale castle came into sight, the lights from the windows glistening across the surface of the lake. Location: the Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Abbot Hannah was called out by Professor McGonagall, and the first of the new group of friends took her place under the Sorting Hat to find her house at Hogwarts. "Ah!" Hannah heard in her head, and she nearly jumped out of her skin as she realized the hat was talking to her telepathically. "Look at you, the first for another year. Let's have a look. Not much difficulty here, I'd say. Loyalty? Loyalty? Loyalty is your creed, and the mark of Sigma is on you. So off you go and welcome to HUFFLEPUFF. The hat shouted the last word, and Hannah skipped off to join her new housemates. Bones Susan was called next, and she followed in her friend's footsteps up to the stool, and she too was shocked to hear the hat's voice. "Have you met Miss Bones?" Susan looked confused as the hat was singing in her mind. "Sorry, got carried away there. Let's see, another marked by Sigma, and as loyal and hardworking as you could want. Join your friend in HUFFLEPUFF. Several other students were sorted before Davis Tracy was called up to the hat. "Ah, yet again I see the mark of Sigma. This is going to be easy this year. Definitely a cunning and ambitious young girl here. Miss Davis, you will do splendidly in Slytherin." Tracy smiled and headed off to the House of the Snakes. "Granger, Hermione, welcome your grace. It has been many long years since I have met a Ravenclaw heir. Quite obvious, really. An unrivaled thirst for knowledge and willingness to learn. The mark of Sigma just makes it official, really. Go, and be a credit to Ravenclaw. Greengrass, Daphne, Miss Greengrass, much like your friend. You are definitely ambitious and are as cunning as a fox. As if the mark of Sigma leaves any doubt, you'll be at your best in Slytherin." The House of the Snakes once again cheered as the pretty young first year sat down at the table and waited to see where her friends would be sorted. "Longbottom, Neville, dear boy, you are more of a credit to your parents than you will ever know. I can see it here in your head. Your loyalty knows no bounds, and I expect you to be a wonderful wizard in the years to come, and marked by Sigma to boot. Go, have fun, and be your best in HUFFLEPUFF." As if it were possible, Neville smiled at the hat's compliments before scurrying off to take a seat next to Hannah at the Hufflepuff table. "Malfoy Draco." Draco heard his name called, and as he had told Harry that he would, he played the pureblood prince role to a T. He pounced as he called it up to the stool and sat down, and as the hat sensed his intentions, it played along, saying only marked by Sigma? "Slytherin." Draco smirked and he headed to the Slytherin table, sitting down next to Daphne as the next student was called forward. When Minerva McGonagall called forward Pevensey Lucy, all the Muggleborns, and a great deal of the half-bloods looked at the girl in confusion as she gracefully took her place on the stool. "Why, hello there, a bit out of time you are. I expected to see you nigh on 50 years ago. Even before Sigma's mark you are an easy one. Lucy, the valiant lioness of Narnia, your affinity to Aslan and your true courage in battle. There is only one place you could ever go. Roar loud, roar strong. Think of Aslan, and of Narnia. Then find your place in Gryffindor. Lucy smiled at the words of the ancient hat before she skipped away to the Gryffindor table to await her best friend. The furtive glances that came when Lucy's name was called instantly became outright curiosity, and mumbling when the next name McGonagall read off her scroll was Potter Windsor, Harry. Your Highness. The hat's mental voice beamed as it was placed on Harry's head. Welcome to Hogwarts. It is an honor to meet the descendant of my creator. Well, let's get on with it. Well, the last girl was the lioness. But you, it seems, are the lion. The bow of Aslan's dear one, don't deny it, boy. But with great and vast intelligence, loyalty to your friends and family, and an ambition to be the best you can. Sigma's mark is joined by Aslan's on you, dear boy, Sir Harry the Lionheart. You too must roar loud, roar strong. Think of Aslan. Now join your dear one in Gryffindor. Harry took his seat beside Lucy at the Gryffindor table and waited for the last students to be sorted. Finally, Zabini, Blaise, became a Slytherin, and the sorting was finished. Dumbledore stood from his place at the head table and waved his arms around expansively. Welcome to another year at Hogwarts. New students and some old students should take note that the Forbidden Forest is out of bounds, and that there is a list of some 1,400 banned items on the door of the caretaker's office. Now, lastly, before the feast, we have some new professors to introduce. Firstly, taking over defense against the dark arts, which the new teacher would prefer we call simply defense, we have Professor Archibald Griffin. Our new history teacher is far better qualified than most, Dr. John Smith, and lastly, our new Muggle Studies teacher is Professor Amy Pond, and her husband and assistant Mr. Rory Williams. Students, you would do well to remember that, as of this year, Muggle Studies is compulsory for all students. That's all for now. Tuck in. Dumbledore finished as the plates along all 4 house tables instantly filled with food. Location: Gryffindor Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Harry and Lucy tagged on to the back of the long line of Gryffindor first years, Lucy taking silent comfort from holding Harry's hand, interlacing their fingers, the memory of her death in 1943 just that morning from her perspective, and the memory of Aslan's country fresh within her mind. Her head dropped to Harry's shoulder as they followed the other new lions through a seemingly never-ending maze of corridors through Hogwarts Castle towards Gryffindor Tower, the third tallest of the towers at the castle. The pompous red-headed prefect Percy Weasley, who was leading them, finally introduced them to the fat lady, the portrait whose sole occupation was to guard the entrance to the Gryffindor common room, and informed them that for the first few weeks of term that the password with which entry would be granted would be Caput Draconis. The portrait acquiesced at the magic words, so to speak, and swung aside, revealing a fairly small round hole in the stone wall through which Percy led the first years through and into the common room. The common room, Harry and Lucy could now see as they were the last two through the portrait hole, was a circular room with several alcoves off it, most containing desks for study, but one contained a fairly large bay window overlooking the grounds. The walls of the room were bedecked in deep red, maroon and gold wall hangings, and there was a large painting of a lion over the fireplace, which was surrounded by several squashy deep red armchairs and an equally squashy red love seat, all of which looked very cozy, and there were several portraits lining the walls, all of which seemed friendly enough. Percy soon started droning about the rules about curfew and proper common room behavior. Harry and Lucy listened boredly as Prefect Percy droned on about rules and regulations. Percy's brother Ron looked equally bored, and the elder twin brothers of Ron had seemed cool, but Percy was just ridiculous. Please spend some time getting to know your housemates. Your curfew is at 10 p.m. Percy informed the first years before heading out the portrait hole. Harry and Lucy, however, after a very emotional day, decided to have an early night, and after Lucy gave Harry one more goodnight hug, Harry retired to his new dorm room, located near the top of the tower. Harry was dismayed to find that the lower years, at least, shared dorm rooms with all of their male house yearmates. He did, however, take in the dorm room, also bedecked in the house colors and the Victorian four-poster made of mahogany, it appeared, a fact confirmed by licking the wood, and dressed with a deep red quilt. His new Gryffindor robes already set on a chair beside his bed. Power. Chapter 6. Power. Good. If you had felt yourself sufficient, it would have been a proof that you were not. Aslan, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, by C.S. Lewis, HarperCollins. Location: Transfiguration Classroom, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Harry and his new group of friends, minus Lucy. Harry hated this fact, looked at each other confusedly as Professor McGonagall ushered them into her office on the 2nd of September, which was their one day off to adjust to Hogwarts for the year. As young Draco here has no doubt told you, the professor started, addressing the 8 first years. You 8 all hold claims to some of the highest seats of power in magical Britain. And with you, Harry, being a royal, you hold even more power than you could begin to know. McGonagall reached back onto her desk and produced 6 pieces of parchment. These 5 documents here, she said, holding up all but one, are sworn statements from the heads of the houses of Slytherin, Greengrass, Davis, Hufflepuff, Longbottom, Lefay, Bones and Abbott, passing all titles and dignities on to their heirs apparent. She then held up the last piece of parchment. This document is a warrant for the arrest of one Lucius Earl Malfoy for fraud and assault of a Muggleborn. Based on these documents, the 7 of you will be eligible and required to claim your Wizengamot seats at the meeting which is being held on Saturday. While Draco, you may take a seat as temporary head of house. Myself, being a countess and member of the Wizengamot, Professor Dumbledore and I will be teaching you what we can on the etiquette of the Wizengamot, and I will be accompanying you to Hogsmeade later today to be fitted for your Wizengamot robes and coronets for formal occasions. On Saturday, I will accompany you all to London, where you will claim your headship and emancipation at the DMLE before we will descend to the Wizengamot chamber, where you will be able to claim your seat and then participate in the election of the next Minister for Magic. And heaven forbid that buffoon Fudge be elected. For the next 20 minutes, Professor McGonagall went over many of the basics of Wizengamot etiquette, everything from the precedence of houses to how one should address the various officers of the austere body. She answered several questions from each student before dismissing them to explore the castle. Location: Wizengamot Chamber, Ministry of Magic Headquarters under Whitehall, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Harry and his friends, including Lucy at his insistence, found themselves at the ministry on that Saturday morning, and Lucy was directed to the viewing gallery of the Wizengamot chamber while the others joined the members of the austere body in the anteroom. After the sitting members of the Wizengamot had already entered, the usher called the young claimants into the room one at a time. As each one went into the room in full magenta robes topped off with the coronet matching their highest rank, they formally announced their claim and waited for the magic of the room to recognize their claim, before stating their political stance, be it liberal, conservative, or crossbench. Being a royal duke, Harry was the last to enter the room, and after his claim was recognized, he waited patiently for the majority to be calculated, so the Wizengamot could vote on the next Minister for Magic. Amos Diggory stood before the Wizengamot 15 minutes later, having been elected as the next Minister for Magic. Honorable Speaker, I open the floor now for any orders of business. Harry stood from the chair that he had been directed to in the front row on the right side of the Chief Warlock's chair. The Honorable House of Potter wishes to make a statement. So be it. Speaker Tiberius Ogden replied. We have today in the visitors' gallery a young lady by the name of Lucy Pevensey. I henceforth take said lady under the protection of the House of Potter. So I speak, so mote it be. Harry said formally. Would the young Miss Pevensey step forward? Speaker Ogden asked, and Lucy rose from the viewing gallery and moved into the center of the chamber. Miss Pevensey, do you accept the protection of House Potter? I do, Lucy affirmed. Very well, you shall henceforth be known by the name of Lucy Pevensey Potter, and shall be entitled to bear the Potter coat of arms and name until such a time as you marry. Under the bylaws of the houses of Gryffindor and Potter, you shall be heiress presumptive to His Royal Highness titles. However, you too shall not be limited by the 1713 Marriage Act, and should you wish, will be allowed to wed. So I speak, so mote it be. Speaker Ogden explained as magical energy swirled around Harry and Lucy, and a bright white light blazed through the hall. Location: Potions Dungeon, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. September 1991 CE. Potions with the Slytherins was the first class that the Gryffindors faced, and much to the disappointment of Ron and the other Gryffindors. Once they discovered that potions would be brewed in groups of 4, Harry and his best friend Lucy formed a group with Daphne and Draco, which Ron Weasley especially perceived as a slight against himself. Before the hot-headed redhead could make his displeasure known, however, the bat-like potions Professor Severus Snape barged into the classroom, the door banging against the wall before it slammed shut, Snape's robe billowing behind him as he walked to the front of the room and began his traditional introduction to the exact art of potion-making as he put it. Right from the start, several Gryffindors were confrontational towards both the Slytherins and the Professor, and Snape replied in kind. Draco, Daphne, Lucy and Harry, on the other hand, followed Snape's instructions carefully, and if needed, courteously asked for help, and much to the surprise of the class, Snape helped, and by the end of class, their potion to cure boils was by far and away the best. Location: History Classroom, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. The Doctor leaned against the TARDIS as it stood behind his desk, watching as the first-year class he was most interested in, the Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs, the class featuring his favorite couple. Despite their age and protests Harry and Lucy, the class finally settled and the Doctor moved forward to sit at the front of his desk and start an informal but informative lecture. Okay, first years, what can you tell me about Merlin? He's the greatest wizard in history. Ernie Macmillan piped up. Very good. 5 points to Hufflepuff, the Doctor said, waiting for any more hands, seeing the knowing look on Harry's face which showed he didn't want to mention that he had met Merlin just 2 weeks before. Merlin Emrys, better known as Merlin Ambrosius, was born in around 934 CE during medieval times, and underwent his Hogwarts education as normal, being sorted into Slytherin House, becoming known as a protégé of Salazar Slytherin himself. Location: forested area, unknown location, Albania, Earth. Time: September 1991 CE. Deep within a thick wood, somewhere in northern Albania, there was a thicket that the local woodsman dare not go. Local legend held that around 11 years ago, that particular thicket became host to a dreadful and dangerous demon, a demon said to capture unwitting travelers and devour them. Littered across the forest floor were the decaying bodies and dry skeletons of 10 years' worth of victims. This demon, however, had not devoured these people, but had attempted to possess them, although most had not enough latent magic to sustain his possession, causing them to die rapidly. The latest addition to the pile of bodies was one Quirinius Quirrell, a man who was absolutely crucial to the demon's plan to return to his home, to England. This demon, who went by the pseudonym Lord Voldemort, and whose real name was Tom Marvolo Riddle, had concocted a plan to resurrect himself using the Child of Prophecy and an ancient dark ritual. This, however, hinged on his ability to return to his country of birth. And now, what he perceived to be his last chance lay dead on the ground. For him, it looked like his plans for absolute power would have to wait a while longer. Location: Room of Requirement, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: November 1991 CE. On the 7th floor of Hogwarts there is a room which can become anything you wish it to be, and it is in this room where Lucy and Harry found themselves 2.5 months into their first year at Hogwarts. Lucy had been missing Narnia and her brothers and sister, and as she passed the room's hidden location, a door appeared. She was disappointed that it was not a door to Narnia, but once she led Harry inside, they found that their clothes had become Narnian-looking, Lucy's dress befitting the graceful queen she was, and Harry's robes befitting a knight of Narnia. Seemingly out of nowhere, music filled the room, a tune Lucy recognized from the golden age of Narnia, and Harry offered his hand to Lucy and they began to dance. Lucy smiled genuinely as her best friend twirled her around a room that had taken on the appearance of the ballroom at Castle Cair Paravel. Lucy smiled inwardly as she danced with her best friend. Ever since they had met, Lucy had felt like Harry and herself were kindred spirits, and now she thought about it, she was sure they were. They both had large secrets to keep. Lucy about the whole world of Narnia, and Harry about being a Time Lord. They both held knowledge beyond their years. Lucy from living an extra 16 years while in Narnia, Harry thanks to his Time Lord consciousness. As they continued to dance with a grace belying their age, Lucy realized that they had to be. Aslan doesn't just bring anyone to Narnia and Aslan's country, and he wouldn't place Lucy where she would be found by just someone. It would have to be someone special, and even though it made her blush thinking that, and she knew they were too young just yet, Harry definitely was special. There were no such complicated thoughts from Harry. His thoughts mostly about how beautiful Lucy looked in the delicately made dress, its silver silk and red cloak being offset by Lucy's auburn hair. Harry wasn't thick, even his large Time Lord consciousness didn't stop him from realizing that Lucy was a beautiful girl and was growing into a beautiful woman, and he knew that Aslan had sent Lucy to his time for something, and the fact of the soul bond of course, but really, who can think about things like that in the arms of a beautiful girl? Merry Little Christmas. Chapter 7. Merry Little Christmas. Merry Christmas. Long live the true king. Father Christmas, the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, by C.S. Lewis, HarperCollins. Location: Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland. Earth. Time: December 1991 CE. The first term at Hogwarts had ended for Harry and his 8 friends, and Harry and Lucy were now staying at Balmoral Castle in northern Scotland, along with Harry's Uncle Charles and Aunt Diana. It was 2 days before Christmas, and Harry and Lucy were riding horses through the expansive estates surrounding the castle, Harry pointing out several landmarks to Lucy. When Harry's horse, ironically called Lucy, was spooked by a grinding sound that Harry would recognize anywhere. Harry watched on as the doctor's TARDIS materialized before them. "Hello, Harry, Lucy," the doctor said jovially as he almost bounded out of the TARDIS. "Early Christmas present for you, Harry, and I thought Lucy could use it as well." He reached into his jacket and produced a matchbox-sized miniature trunk, which he threw to the ground where it rapidly resized. The trunk looked much like his school trunk, but with 7 lock holes. When the doctor produced a keyring with 6 old-style warded lock keys and a 7th ordinary Yale lock key, Harry's eyes lit up. Lucy looked on in momentary confusion as Harry inserted the Yale key into the 7th lock, and as the trunk lid swung open, Lucy gasped as Harry jumped down inside the trunk. Before she remembered being told about the bigger on the inside capabilities of a TARDIS, and after the doctor assured he would return the horses to the stables, followed her best friend. Location: Harry's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. "So the doctor's given you your own TARDIS?" Lucy asked her best friend as she landed, noticing the room had a very clinical outlook compared to the doctor's TARDIS, with what had to be the original console, a silver metal hexagon covered in various colored lights, buttons, switches and screens. "Yeah," Harry replied happily as he surveyed his very own TARDIS. "Now, let's see what we can do about this desktop layout," Harry said as he surveyed a small screen and bank of buttons on the furthest side of the console from the door. Lucy watched quietly as Harry fiddled with the bank of buttons as he looked for the console design he liked, muttering to himself as he did so. No, none of those are quite right. Wait. Here we go. Custom." Harry continued muttering about various features and colors and pieces of furniture, before Harry released a triumphant cry and pressed a green button on the console. And Lucy watched in awe as the new design faded into place, and the new console room reminded Lucy a lot of both Gryffindor Tower and Harry's bedroom at Buckingham Palace. Harry now looked around in satisfaction. The console room now contained 3 levels, much like in the doctor's TARDIS. On the center level was the console, now appearing to be made of mahogany wood, but looking strangely reminiscent of the console and dash of a luxury car. The time rotor was made of blown glass and extended all the way to the roof. The floor of this level appeared to be made of flagstone. 3 staircases extended away from the central level, 1 down to the lower level, and 2 to the upper level, which covered around 3/4 of the middle level. The walls of the room were still covered in strange roundels, now colored a dark brown, and there were maroon wall hangings. "It looks amazing," Lucy said in awe. "You ain't seen nothing yet," Harry said cheekily, pulling Lucy by the hand to show her the lower level of the new extended console room. This level was taken up by a kitchen area, also with a flagstone floor. The bench tops were marble and the fittings weren't particularly modern. Harry then showed Lucy a small door which led through to a laundry room, and another door which Harry mentioned was linked to the TARDIS's internal garden, before leading her back through the kitchen and up to the 3rd level of the console room. This upper level was taken up by a combined library and sitting room. Harry mentioning offhandedly that this library was linked to the main library and had access to any book in history, before pointing out the warm fireplace and the maroon love seat placed on a Persian rug in front of it. Lucy was surprised by the portrait above the fireplace, smiling as she realized it appeared to be a portrait of Harry and Lucy how they had been dressed on the Dawn Treader, in the pose they had so often found themselves in, Lucy's head on Harry's shoulder as he wrapped his arm around her in a one-armed hug. As Harry led her back to the main level of the expansive room, she noticed the filing cabinets against the wall. "Now, what say we go for a little trip?" Harry asked with a lopsided grin, widening to a massive one when Lucy agreed. Not telling her where they were going, Harry set the TARDIS in flight before leading Lucy through a hidden door to show her the bedroom he had made for her. The TARDIS landed with a dull thud. "So where are we?" Lucy asked. "Take a look," Harry encouraged, nudging Lucy towards the door. Location: Winchester Road, Chawton, Hampshire, England, Earth. Time: December 1815 CE. Lucy stepped out of Harry's TARDIS, vaguely noticing it had taken the shape of a park bench, looking around in awe, having never traveled by TARDIS, only having seen it leave and arrive. "So where are we?" she asked her best friend, taking in the ambience of the small country village. Lucy did a double take as Harry nonchalantly said, "Chawton in 1815. "Did you say Chawton, as in Jane Austen Chawton?" Lucy asked. "Yes, I did. Chawton, Hampshire. It is December 1815 and the Prince Regent has just asked Jane Austen to dedicate Emma to himself. The doctor gave me my TARDIS as a Christmas present, so I'm using my TARDIS to give you a Christmas present," Harry said with a smile, knowing just how much of a Jane Austen fan Lucy was. Harry and Lucy had found Jane Austen walking through the countryside, and Harry had somehow, through some sweet talking, and even a claim that Lucy was a queen he said of some far-flung country, not a lie but a bending of the truth, convinced the most famous romantic author of all time to sign a first-edition copy of Pride and Prejudice, Lucy's favorite of all Austen's works, which he had produced from a pocket in his jacket. Lucy had stared in awe at the now autographed first edition of Pride and Prejudice the whole time Harry had guided her back to the TARDIS. She finally broke out of her reverie long enough to pull him into a bear hug, or a Lucy hug as he and Caspian had taken to calling them while on the Dawn Treader, and kissing him on the cheek before entering the TARDIS smiling widely all the time. Location: Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, Earth. Time: December 1991 CE. Harry's TARDIS faded into existence in Harry's suite at Balmoral Castle, and took the shape of a 7-compartment magical trunk. Location: Harry's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. Lucy made to leave the TARDIS as soon as she heard the dull thud of the landing, but was stopped by Harry. "Lou." Harry held out a Yale key on a chain. "This is for you anytime you want. Feel free to come in here and read. Think of it as a frequent flyer's privilege. You may not be one yet, but you will be." Lucy beamed at Harry and kissed him on the cheek again before skipping out the door. Harry stood in front of the console for a moment, stunned, his fingers lightly touching the place that Lucy's lips had touched, before he shook himself out of his stupor and followed his best friend. Location: Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, Earth. Time: December 1991 CE. Christmas Day arrived, and Lucy experienced her first royal Christmas. The family were in Balmoral for Christmas, and surprising as it may be for any outsiders, the royal Christmas dinner was a raucous affair, with all the royal grandchildren in attendance, as well as all the Queen's children, Diana, Princess of Wales, Sarah, Duchess of York, the Queen Mother, and the Princess Margaret. Banter crossed the table back and forth, and the casualness of the meal was a sight to see. The ever-observant Elizabeths, both the Queen and the Queen Mother, noticed that Lucy seemed down. It was her first Christmas without her family after all, and that Harry was offering her silent comfort, resting his hand over hers as he ate with his left hand, somewhat awkwardly, but he rarely lifted his right hand from Lucy's left. Dinner finished, the Christmas pudding polished off, and the family of royals retired to a cozy room within Balmoral. A piano sat in the corner, and the family continued their tradition of singing Christmas carols after dinner. Zara took her place at the piano, playing requests as each member present took their turn to choose and sing a carol. Lucy remembered hearing a carol on the radio days before by Judy Garland, an actress she thought she remembered from her life in the 1940s, and when her turn came, she asked Zara to play by whispering in her ear, and as the first note started, Lucy began to sing. Have yourself a merry little Christmas, make the Yuletide gay from now on, our troubles will be miles away. Lucy's gay and happy voice sung the 1940s classic carol, even while she had a look of sadness on her face. Harry came forward and wrapped his friend in a hug, even as she continued to sing, and the whole family joined in. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who are dear to us gather near to us once more. Through the years, we all will be together if the fates allow. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now. Once again the Queen and her mother noticed once again just how protective of and concerned for Lucy that Harry seemed to be, and they realized, even if no one else did, that Harry and Lucy would most likely be a couple when they were older. Location: Riding Trail, near Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland. Earth. Time: December 1991 CE. So where are we going? Lucy asked from the back of her slightly smaller, yet dignified bay stallion she had named Trumpkin after her dear little friend, a gift from the royal family. Patience, Lou. It's another surprise, but you'll love this. I didn't even know about it until a few days ago. Harry answered from his excitable chestnut mare named Lucy as he steered his horse across the A93 away from Balmoral and up a narrow but not particularly steep mountain trail away from the road. The trail continued to rise gradually, winding up into the mountains of the Cairngorms National Park, and over time, it reached a plateau and the trail flattened out. After about an hour of riding, Harry swung down off his saddle just as Lucy did and led her over to the edge of a cliff. There below them spread the collected magical establishment of Hogwarts Castle and Hogsmeade Village, separated by Hogwarts Lake and the wide expanses of the dark forest. Lucy looked on in awe at the expanse of the grounds backing right up against the cliff in place of one part of the castle wall. Can we go down to Hogsmeade? Lucy asked, having heard much about the village from upperclassmen at Hogwarts, looking down at the village in wonder. I suppose we can, Harry said, remounting his horse just as Lucy did hers, and they set off down another ponderous and winding path which made its way down the cliff and around the castle and lake and into the village. The Castle's Hidden Secrets. Chapter 8. A Castle's Hidden Secrets. Oh, I would never dream of assuming I know all Hogwarts secrets, Igor. Albus Dumbledore, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Bloomsbury. Location: Founder's Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland. Earth. Time: February 1991 CE. Professor McGonagall led the group of 9 first years along the 7th floor towards an almost forgotten tower in a forgotten part of the school. There were no longer any classes held in this corner of the 7th floor, and most of the corridor was covered in a fine film of dust. We will have the elves work on cleaning this part of the school as soon as we can, McGonagall informed the group as she came to a stop outside a portrait on a flat section of wall bridging 2 parts of the corner. The portrait was of 2 men and 2 women, the 4 founders of course, and it was the blonde man, who was obviously Godric Gryffindor or the Master, or Archibald Griffin, who spoke. Password? He asked, looking at Professor McGonagall expectantly. Every lion needs a lioness, was the response, and with a nod, the portrait swung forwards, showing a large oak door with an iron handle. The professor gestured for Harry to open the door, and he led his friends through into the tower's common room. Welcome, children, to the fabled Founder's Tower, McGonagall said with a wide sweep of her arms encompassing the whole of the room. The other heads of house, myself and Professor Dumbledore, have decided that as you have not only homework assignments but also work to do with the Wizengamot and family headship, you should have a place where you can do all this work free from distraction. There are several rules you will be required to observe at all times. After explaining the rules they would be required to observe to retain use of the tower, McGonagall left the room, telling the students that she would leave them to settle in, the group immediately setting about organizing the main room of the tower just as they wanted it, while Hermione immediately set upon looking through the Founder's private library, which was housed within the tower. Location: Secret Chamber, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland. Earth. Time: February 1991 CE. After some 2 weeks of exploring the Founder's Tower between classes, the friends stumbled on a secret staircase that led down through the wall of the castle, down to the basement level. Harry and Lucy led the group of 9 forward as they picked their way through the gloom of an area of the castle that looked like it had seldom been used for hundreds of years. The wall hangings and tapestries were moth-eaten, the portraits all covered in black cloth, the torches on the walls casting just the barest amount of light, the charms on them obviously almost run out. Lighting their wands, they continued forwards, following the corridor to its end, being ever cautious, but more confident with every meter they moved forwards until they came upon an oak door with a rusted lock and doorknob, which when Lucy pushed, moved inwards easily. The group looked curiously around the new room they found themselves in, feeling the rush of almost pure magic, noticing that the rich tapestries in this room showed no signs of decay, nor did the large rug in the center of the room. In the center of the rug, a wooden lectern stood tall. A large tome lay open to the first page upon it. Reminded strongly of the book of incantations she had read from on the Dawn Treader's voyage, Lucy leant forward and read the text written there in clear Old English handwriting. Welcome, heirs. You must be our heirs if you have managed to find your way into the Chamber of Secrets, the true chamber, not the false one so cleverly designed by Salazar. Long ago, when the school was first constructed, we realized that to allow not only the wards to function, but also to allow the castle to withstand the magic performed within, we would need a magical keystone, a room which could draw excess magic away from the castle structure and use it to power the wards. The resulting underground chamber, this chamber, and the network of tunnels and chambers surrounding it, which spread for many hundreds of miles, are the school's last defense, the sum total of the knowledge of the founders and of the greatest student in the school's history, Merlin Ambrosius. This tome before you is the fabled Great Grimoire of Hogwarts, and also within these chambers you will find the hidden secret journals owned by we founders and Merlin himself. Written this 22nd day of August, in the year of our Lord 1092, by Salazar Slytherin, 1st Duke of Slytherin, Godric Gryffindor, 1st Duke of Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, 1st Duchess of Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw, 1st Duchess of Ravenclaw, and witnessed by Merlin, 1st Duke of Emrys, King's Wizard. The 9 students gaped in amazement, the purebloods even more so when they heard Lucy say Great Grimoire of Hogwarts, the fabled lost knowledge of the founders, which disappeared in 1098 and was never seen again, soon mythologized and dissolved into history. Further exploration of the vast underground network of caverns and tunnels led them to an armory just to the side of the grimoire chamber. This armory also contained a full-size archery range, and Lucy immediately stepped forward, stringing a bow and pulling an arrow from a quiver hanging on a hook near the firing line. Stepping up to the line, she took aim and loosed the arrow, her friends watching in awe as the arrow flew straight and true to strike the very center of the bullseye. She smiled when Harry handed her a dagger, and after a few moments getting a feel for the balance, she threw the dagger and was satisfied to see it also score a bullseye, but slightly off to the side after it clipped the arrow already embedded there. Lucy had always struggled going from Narnia back to England, but if there was to be a place such as this in easy reach, maybe it would be that much easy for her. Location: Muggle Studies Classroom, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: February 1991 CE. Professor Amy Pond, the first Muggle teacher in the history of the establishment, stood before her first-year Gryffindor and Ravenclaw Muggle Studies class, an almost imperceptible smile on her face as the students filtered in, Harry and Lucy having been there 5 minutes early, the pair currently sitting heads together having a conversation and scheming in a way that only best friends can. Heaven help whoever hurts either of those two, Amy thought to herself as the class started to settle down, but the scheming continued until Amy decided to embarrass her adopted younger brother, as she thought of Harry. Harry! Lucy! Flirt on your own time! Amy barked as the whole class erupted into laughter, except of course for Harry and Lucy, both blushing bright red, looking petulantly at one Amy Pond. Okay. Settle down now, class. Leave Harry and Lucy alone. Amy continued, smirking at Harry and Lucy's rebellious looks. Now, last week we studied the concept of electricity, and this week we will be studying its applications in the Muggle world. Location: Harry's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. Bloody Amy Pond. I'll get her back, Harry muttered as he raced around his TARDIS console, intent on just getting away from Hogwarts for a while. Lucy watching on, leaning against the console as Harry rushed past her. "Come on, Harry, it's no worse than Edmund or Caspian," Lucy said. "And at least they're teasing you about someone you like." "You do like me, don't you?" Lucy asked, her insecurity about her, in her eyes, more beautiful sister raising its ugly head again. "Of course I like you, Lucy. I already told you that you were beautiful on the Dawn Treader. I would have thought that was a giveaway." Harry reassured and was rewarded by a radiant smile, a big Lucy hug and another kiss on the cheek. Location: the library, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: December 1993 CE. "Neville?" Lucy asked as the group of friends sat around a table in the library revising for upcoming exams. "This bit about Devil's Snare? Does it have to sunlight? Or would any form of magically conjured light suffice?" The question led several other members of the group to listen on in interest, as each of the students had a subject in which they excelled most, and herbology was definitely Neville's strong suit. "Well, no, it doesn't. Pure sunlight works best, followed by conjured sunlight, but any other form of light or heat will also work to varying degrees," Neville answered. "Thanks," Lucy said brightly, making a note in her book. "That's okay. Now could you tell me what the difference is between a basic elixir and a tincture is? I know they are both medicinal," Neville asked back, Lucy being one of the strongest potioneers in the group. "Okay," Lucy said, trying to put it best into words. "A basic elixir is an aromatic, generally sweetened medicinal potion, while a tincture is a potion made up of a benign medicine preserved in alcohol, which results in a bitter taste." "Right. Brilliant," Neville replied. Questions continued to be traded back and forth amongst the group right until it was time for dinner. Approaching summer. Chapter 9. Approaching summer. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, HarperCollins. Location: Hogwarts Express, near Edinburgh Waverley Railway Station, Edinburgh, Scotland, Earth. En route to London King's Cross Station. Time: June 1992 CE. The Hogwarts Express steamed through the Scottish capital of Edinburgh on its way southwards to King's Cross in the centre of London. Inside a compartment near the rear of the train, the group of 9 friends were chatting animatedly about their summer plans after the last few weeks of their first year had passed by rapidly in a haze of exams and breaks between them spent enjoying the warm sunshine. Hermione's were perhaps the most exciting, traveling to the south of France, then skiing in the Alps. Daphne, Tracy, Susan and Hannah were spending the holidays visiting each other. Neville, whose love for herbology had grown over their first year, would be spending his time in the Longbottom greenhouses. Draco would probably follow his socialite mother all over the country to various parties. Lucy, who had very little living family, if any by this time, would be living with Harry Go Figure as his ward, and he would be staying at Balmoral Castle, possibly with a few trips with the doctor on the side. Anyone looking into the compartment would probably think that it was quite a cute scene. Students from all 4 houses taking animatedly together while Lucy and Daphne snoozed, their heads on Harry and Draco's shoulders respectively. Harry took a moment out from the conversation, looking out the window as the train streaked through Waverley Station in Edinburgh, the muggles on the platform completely clueless that the train was filled with magical children. The end of the platform went past and the train was again streaking through suburbia, southwards towards the east coast and on to London. Location: Pancras Road, Camden Islington, London, England, Earth. Time: June 1992 CE. The black limousine pulled away from the side of the road outside King's Cross Station and started off towards Heathrow. Harry and Lucy, both of whom were rapidly getting used to the royal lifestyle, were relaxing in the back of the limousine, enjoying the opportunity to be themselves without teasing, Lucy reclining leisurely against Harry's chest, his hand absent-mindedly playing with the tips of Lucy's flowing auburn hair. Most people thought they were a couple already, but as far as they were concerned, they'd grown up together and they were just best friends, not ready for being a couple. Yet, this may be surprising thinking from a pair of 11-year-olds, but considering one had already lived through the first 23 years of her life, not unexpected. The pair remained in this position as the car followed the A40 towards Heathrow. Location: somewhere over Scotland, Earth. En route to Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, Earth. Time: June 1992 CE. The specially built Airbus A319 carrying Harry, Lucy, and the Prince of Wales, who had met the others at Heathrow, was currently flying high over Scotland towards Balmoral in the north. Charles was reading Murder on the Orient Express, one of his favorite all-time novels, occasionally looking over at the two young Gryffindors sitting in one of the rows slightly ahead of him on the other side of the plane. The pair were fast asleep in a position that Charles and the rest of the family had quickly become accustomed to seeing over Christmas, heads together, blissful smiles on their faces. Harry started stirring as the Airbus started its descent downwards towards Balmoral's private airstrip, feeling the comforting weight of Lucy's head against his shoulder. As the plane came in to land, Harry whispered into Lucy's ear, watching as she twitched slightly first from the hot breath on her neck. Lucy, love. The plane is landing. It's time to wake up. Wait, I'm up. Lucy muttered groggily, missing the snort from Harry at the very unladylike waking up of the High Queen of Narnia. We're here, Lou. Welcome back to Balmoral. Location: Balmoral Castle, Royal Deeside, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, Earth. Time: June 1992 CE. Lulu, Jamie, come play with me and Jeannie, the young Princess Beatrice begged, puppy dog eyes strongly reminding Lucy of a moment some 3 years ago from her perspective, on the fateful day where she had stumbled through a wardrobe in a spare room, finding herself in a world of beauty and magic. And now she understood why Peter had given in so easily. It was just too adorable. Harry was already making his way over to where Eugenie was sitting and was tickling the now giggling infant, even as Lucy acquiesced and took the hand offered to her by Beatrice. Taking a seat next to Harry, unconsciously sitting so their shoulders were barely touching, Lucy started teaching Bea basic hand-clapping games, most of which she had learned from her sister Susan. In a short break between games, Lucy glanced at Harry, who was alternating between playing peekaboo and tickling the adorable girl. As she turned back to focus on playing with Beatrice again, she didn't notice Harry glancing at her in turn, nor did she notice Prince Andrew's head look in on the 4 kids, smiling before returning to the sitting room where the adults were conversing. After an hour or so, Andrew and his wife came into the playroom, and after some coaxing they took Bea and Jeannie off to bed and Harry and Lucy were left alone. They soon found themselves sitting in what could be considered their traditional pose, the pose they adopted whenever they sorted out what was going on in their lives from day to day and to draw support from each other, side by side, Lucy resting her head on Harry's shoulder. A week later, Harry and Lucy took the opportunity to leave the younger royals with their parents and went for a horse ride. The 2 horses, Trumpkin and Lucy, were currently trotting along a riding trail leading away from the castle to the village of Braemar before following the River Dee up further into the highlands, their riders enjoying the opportunity to get away from the castle without a chaperone for a while. The accomplished, if young riders, crossed the River Dee onto an island via a ford about 6 kilometers north of Braemar, and after dismounting from their steeds, Harry produced a picnic basket and blanket and the pair took a seat on the soft grass, chatting amiably as they polished off a picnic lunch, breathing in the cool and clean air of the Scottish Highlands, neither noticing the lady beetle which perched itself on the flagon of pumpkin juice resting on the picnic blanket. The next morning, a tired and ruffled-looking owl sailed into a small dining room at Balmoral Castle, delivering the early morning prophet just as Harry and Lucy walked in for breakfast, Charles taking one look at the front page and immediately passing it over to Harry, who gaped reading the headline, a reaction mirrored by Lucy when she glanced over as well, and they immediately started reading the article together. Scotland's Summer Loving for Prince WHO lived, by Rita Skeeter, Special Correspondent. It appears that young Prince Harry James, Duke of Gryffindor, better known as Harry Potter Windsor in the wizarding world, has found a young woman to give his heart. When he became one of a spate of 11-year-olds sitting as lords and ladies of the Wizenagamote in September last year, the young Duke announced a muggle born by the name of Lucy Pevensey as a ward of the House of Potter, the oldest of the most ancient and noble houses and second oldest of His Royal Highness's seats, allowing her to take the name of Lucy Pevensey Potter. Later that year, the prophet can exclusively reveal that the young Miss Pevensey Potter joined the prince and his family at Balmoral Castle in northern Scotland over Christmas, and once again over summer, where the prophet can once again exclusively reveal that just yesterday, Miss Pevensey Potter joined the prince on a romantic horse ride alongside the River Dee, culminating in a picnic lunch west of Braemar in the Scottish Highlands. Upon investigation at the Department of Mysteries' Bonds office, this reporter can reveal that the Book of Bonds, kept since 1965 by Master Unspeakable Wilhelmina Clinkunthank, recognizes a destiny bond between the two preteens. On encountering this statement, Clinkunthank was kind enough to explain that a destiny bond can only occur between two people who carry the same or similar destinies and acts as a weak forerunner to a full-blown soul bond. The palace and Prince Harry James were unavailable for comment today, and it is unclear just where the prince and Miss Pevensey Potter actually met. For more information about Prince Harry James, page 3. For more information about the royal family, page 6. For speculation on the identity of Miss Pevensey Potter, page 27. Harry just sighed before looking at his best friend. Well, welcome to the world of wild royal speculation. His Uncle Charles informed the two as he sipped his tea at the head of the table. Just ignore it and don't let the media rule your life. Lucy, used to having to live up to the expectations of her subjects as a queen of Narnia, knew that Charles was right, patting Harry's hand comfortingly before pouring herself her morning cuppa, a ritual that had started early in her years in Narnia and had persevered even after she and her siblings had regressed to their original age the first time they had returned to England from their magical kingdom. Jamie and Lulu sitting in a tree. Bee was singing, joined by 10-year-old Will and 8-year-old Henry Harry to the royals, while the infant Jeannie just clapped along oblivious to the real teasing nature of the song just yet. Really, Bee? Lucy asked, walking up to the girl, slowly waggling her fingers in a tickling motion, causing the young princess to squeal and run off only to be caught by Harry, and there was soon an intense tickle war taking place amongst the young royals and Lucy. After Charles came in, breaking up the war to inform the children that lunch was ready, Lucy kissed Harry sweetly on the cheek, causing the young ones to start giggling and break out into song again. New Professor, Old Friend. Chapter 10. New Professor, Old Friend. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed the whole story. C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, HarperCollins. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1992. See Lucy. A voice asked. Lucy looked up from her holiday homework from where she was sitting next to Harry and noticed that the Queen was standing there. I have a visitor coming today, a magical lord who has come for a meeting with myself, and I thought you might like to meet him, the Queen said mysteriously. You can come too, Harry, she added before leading the two away to her private study. As they entered the Queen's study, Harry and Lucy rolled their eyes at the herald who announced their presence to an empty room, announcing Her Majesty the Queen and Miss Lucy Pevensey Potter, escorted by His Royal Highness the Duke of Gryffindor, Marquis Potter and Peveril, Earl of Monmouth, Baron Evans. The royals and Lucy took a seat and chatted amiably until the herald announced a newcomer, and the three stood to greet him. Announcing the Right Honourable the Earl Kirk of Oxfordshire. Hearing the name of the newcomer, Lucy looked at him closely. Professor Kirk, who had taken the Pevenseys in World War II, had not been a young man, but here, some 50 years later, was the professor, looking just as he had then. Professor? Professor Kirk? Lucy asked, unsure. The Earl Kirk looked at Lucy strangely. He had thought she looked like the Lucy Pevensey she knew from long ago, but also was sure it could not be her, for she had died in 1943. But when she innocently asked if he was Professor Kirk, he had to know. Lucy Pevensey? Little Lucy Pevensey. Yes, it's me, Professor, Lucy said, tearing up slightly as she hugged the aged professor. And for just a moment, it was 1940 and Lucy had just had an argument with her siblings about the existence of Narnia. They told me you died, Lucy. I went to your funeral, Diggory Kirk said, also tearing up. Lucy had only one word she could say in reply to the professor, a word that made him nod in complete understanding, for only one person could manage something of that magnitude. Aslan. Ah, of course. And this must be the famous boyfriend of yours? Harry Potter Windsor, I believe. Or should that be the Duke of Gryffindor, Your Highness? Diggory said with an almost knowing smile. For a friend of Lucy? Harry is just fine, Harry replied to Diggory even as Lucy huffed, stomping her foot. Harry is not my boyfriend. The mumbled yet did not go by unnoticed by anyone in the room. After an hour of catching up, Diggory decided it was probably time to undertake the business he had come for and politely addressed Harry and Lucy. Harry, Lucy, might I now have some privacy for my meeting with Her Majesty? Of course, Professor. Both children said. Might we go to Diagon Alley, Grandmum? Harry asked. Of course, James dear. Get Gerard to take you. The Queen replied, referring to one of the many palace staff. Location: Kirk Manor, near Coombe, Oxfordshire, England, Earth. Time: July 1992 CE. Come in, Professor Dumbledore. Come in, the elderly witch Mrs. Macready said as she welcomed the Hogwarts headmaster in from the rain. Sorry to keep you waiting in the rain. Professor Kirk is in his study. You know the way. Yes, of course, thank you, my dear lady. Dumbledore said politely, climbing the first 2 short flights of stairs and entered the study after knocking. He was beckoned in by his old colleague and friend. Come in, Albus, dear fellow, come in. What can I do for you today? I need you to come back and teach old friend. Dumbledore explained his issue to Diggory. I need you to come back and teach your specialist subject. Deep magics. Diggory looked confused. Do you really think that anyone at Hogwarts is accomplished enough to handle deep magics, the very magic which holds the fabrics of this world and all others together? I can think of a few, Aslan's chosen ones and their friends, a group of 9 second years with the latent power of some of our oldest families. Dumbledore replied, You would have me teach the power of the deep magic to 9 second years? Diggory looked at Dumbledore wide-eyed. Do you realize what can happen if someone lacking the power and control tries to harness the deep magic? Yes, I do, and yes, I would. 2 of your students would be Harry Potter Windsor and Lucy Pevensey Potter. I believe you know them. Dumbledore asked, eyes twinkling. I think we both agree that those 2 have more than enough understanding of deep magic. None more so than Lucy. Yes, I suppose you are right there. But what of the other 7? Diggory asked, corking an eyebrow at the Hogwarts headmaster. I think they will manage quite nicely. 3 are the heirs of the founders, 1 is the heir of Morgan Le Fay, the great librarian of Camelot, and the other 3 should be well capable. They are very magically powerful. Dumbledore reassured his friend. Very well. Diggory finally caved. But I'll need a private classroom. You can't be too careful. Of course. Lucy and her friends have access to the Founder's Tower. Together with them, I'm sure you'll find a room in the tower somewhere. Dumbledore made sure his friend had no chance to argue. Location: Yaxley Manor, near Ashford, Kent, England, Earth. Time: July 1992 CE. Ernest Yaxley, one of Lord Voldemort's staunchest supporters, and one who had escaped prosecution by pleading the Imperius Curse, was sitting in his drawing room, sipping a fine cognac, thinking about one particular artifact of the Dark Lords, a diary which he had kept stored in his Gringotts vault for near to 50 years. Floppy! Yaxley yelled, making a mental note to never let his children name his house elf ever again. Yes's master? The house elf asked after popping in dressed in a dirty pillowcase. Go to Gringotts and withdraw an old diary from my vault, you know the one. Yaxley ordered. Floppy wills be doing so, master. The elf replied, cowering at the thought of the dark, tainted object. Well, begone with you, filthy beast. Yaxley raged, backhanding Floppy before the elf popped out again. End of Part 1. Cast notes. Starring David Tennant as the 10th Dr. Matt Smith as the 11th Dr. Freema Agyeman as Martha Jones, Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, Arthur Darvill as Rory Williams with Daniel Radcliffe as Harry, Duke of Gryffindor, and Georgie Henley as Lucy Pevensey. Hogwarts students: Emma Watson as Hermione Granger, Freya Wilson as Daphne Greengrass, Matthew Lewis as Neville Longbottom, Ellie Darcy Alden as Susan Bones, Ramona Marquez as Hannah Abbott, Tom Felton as Draco Malfoy, Izzy Meeklesmall as Tracy Davis, Chris Rankin as Percy Weasley Narnians, William Mosley as Peter Pevensey, Anna Popplewell as Susan Pevensey, Skander Keynes as Edmund Pevensey, Will Poulter as Eustace Scrubb, Jim Broadbent as Diggory Kirk, Ben Barnes as King Caspian, X Gary Sweet as Captain Drinian, Simon Pegg as Reepicheep, voice Liam Neeson as Aslan, voice others, the royal family as themselves. John Sim as the 16th Master, Archibald Griffin, Michael Gambon as Albus Dumbledore, Maggie Smith as Minerva McGonagall, Peter Mullen as Ernest Yaxley. Coming soon Part 2, Camera Sub Rosa. Return to Hogwarts, Harry Potter and A Harry Potter Chronicles of Narnia, Doctor Who fanfic by Dr. B. 1993. Chapter 11. Return to Hogwarts. It was too big. Too many empty rooms. Does it ever bother you, Amy, that your life doesn't make any sense? The Doctor, the Pandorica opens. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1992 CE. Harry and Lucy were working through their holiday potions essays, Lucy helping Harry by reading through it, just as he had corrected her astronomy essay. Lacewing larvae are used in hair-changing potion, not the actual flies, Harry, Lucy pointed out. Lacewing flies are only used in very complicated and powerful transformation potions like Polyjuice. Harry looked down at where Lucy was pointing, flicking to the correct page in the textbook and double-checking. Oh right, he said, scratching out flies and writing in larvae instead. Thanks, Lou, he said with a sincere smile. That's okay, Harry. Otherwise your essay is done. Just rewrite it onto fresh parchment and you'll be finished. Lucy smiled at her friend as he nodded and pulled a fresh roll of parchment and his fountain pen towards him. Glad that Hogwarts required quills only on tests and exams. Harry, Lucy, Harry's young cousin Zara Phillips, who would be attending Hogwarts for the first time in September, barged into Harry's bedroom. Can you please tell me about Hogwarts? Mum won't tell me and it's driving me insane. Pretty please, Zara begged her older cousin and his best friend. Harry and Lucy looked at each other and shook their heads. If Aunt Anne won't tell you, I won't either. Sorry, Zara. Come on. I'm dying here, she moaned. Could you at least let me read Hogwarts, a history? She tried a different tack. Nope, that would spoil the surprise, Harry said, watching as Zara huffed and left the room once again. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: July 1992 CE. Days later, Zara's nervousness about Hogwarts was compounded when Hogwarts letters arrived. As the barn owl arrived, Harry took his and Lucy's letters and left Zara's for her to collect before running off to find Lou. As he handed Lucy's over, he ripped open his letter and unfolded the sheets of parchment inside. He looked upon Professor McGonagall's neat script written in green ink and read the letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Dear Mr. Potter Windsor, we are pleased to invite you to your second-year education at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You will find enclosed a list of all necessary textbooks. We highly recommend that students replace any material which you used in the previous year. After conference between the headmaster and your head of house, it has been decided that you are to be offered a place in a selective course, the Deep Magics of the Worlds, in addition to your normal course load. Under Hogwarts course policy for second years, you are no longer required to undertake the astronomy course at this time. A classroom for this subject has not yet been assigned and is up to conference between yourself, your classmates, and the teacher, Professor D. Kirk. Term begins as per usual on September 1st, and you will be required to take the Hogwarts Express from platform 9 3/4 at London King's Cross Railway Station at 11 a.m. Yours sincerely, Professor McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, Head of Gryffindor House. Harry finished reading the first sheet of parchment, noting the selective course he was being offered and the name of the professor. Lucy mentioned she had the same offer as Harry, and they both turned to the textbook list for the new term. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Second-year students should have a copy of the following course books: The Standard Book of Spells Grade 2 by Miranda Goshawk, New Approaches to Learning Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch, Deep Magics of the World by Diggory Kirk, Earl Kirk of Oxfordshire, Dark Creatures in Detail by Quentin Trimble. Second years and above are allowed to bring a broomstick to school. Harry smiled as he noticed Lucy's letters were virtually the same as his, and he offered her his arm as they went off in search of his grandmother to ask permission to go into Diagon Alley with Zara to collect their books and equipment. Location: Hogwarts Express, near Grantham Railway Station, England, Earth. Time: September 1992 CE. Once again, the Scarlet Steam Train loaded with Hogwarts students steamed northwards towards the school in the far north, and in a compartment near the rear of the train, 9 second years and 2 soon-to-be first years were in a deep discussion about Hogwarts. But true to their word, Harry and Lucy made sure nothing was revealed to Zara that would spoil the surprise. So we all got letters offering us a place in a class named Deep Magics of the Worlds? Harry asked his friends as the Hogwarts Express sped along the East Coast main line towards its destination. What is Dumbledore playing at? And who is this Professor D. Kirk? Hermione asked, surprised she had not heard of such a professor. He's an old friend, was Lucy's only response. The young brunette stroked the cover of the diary she had found in her cauldron after Diagon Alley. Looking cautiously around the empty compartment, she took out her quill and started to write in the diary, her eyes rolling back in her head as she did so. Location: Chamber of Secrets under Hogwarts, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1992 CE. As the girl wrote in the diary, deep underneath Hogwarts, in a chamber within Hogwarts' underground network, several ancient creatures stirred. 1. A large snake. The king of the serpents stirred from its 1,000-year slumber, sensing that Hogwarts would soon enough need protection from one who meant it harm. The other creatures were interlopers, creatures who had crash-landed on Earth and took refuge at Hogwarts using the latent radiation caused by magic to rebuild their damaged bodies. The most feared creatures in the universe were preparing to descend on Hogwarts. It was Hogwarts' darkest hour, its time of angels. Location: Gryffindor Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1992 CE. Lucy sat staring into the fire in the common room, tears running down her cheeks silently. Harry saw this and he silently took a seat beside her in the Scarlet Love Seat, wrapping his arms gently around Lucy, allowing her to sob into his shoulder as he patted her back gently, whispering into her ear softly, "It's okay, Lou. Let it all out." Then Ron Weasley, who had been shoving his foot in his mouth around Harry and Lucy all first year, decided it would be a good time to show his hand. "Oi, you two. Stop being so lovey-dovey. It makes me want to vomit." Harry cringed and reached for his wand to teach Ron some manners, but he was beaten to it by a red-eyed Lucy who had her wand out in a moment. Lang Lock! But Lucy wasn't finished by gluing his tongue to the roof of his mouth. She continued to go off on a very rare tirade. "How dare you? You foul, selfish, insufferable git. I'll be lovey-dovey with Harry whenever I bloody well want. Not that it matters to you, but Harry was comforting me because it's been a year since I lost my family. So just get over yourself and for once think about something other than yourself and your bloody stomach." She punctuated her tirade by adding a large red handprint across his face as she slapped him before storming off for places unknown. "You are an absolute git, Ronald," Harry yelled before running after Lucy. Location: Room of Requirement, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: September 1992 CE. Harry eventually found Lucy holed up in the Room of Requirement, the room looking like the ballroom at Cair Paravel. "Lou?" he asked, cautiously. "Lou? I'm here for you. I know you are Harry," Lucy replied with a watery smile. "I'm sorry I ran off like that, but that red-headed git just really riled me up." Lucy clenched her fists until Harry sat beside her on the stone balustrade and gently unclenched her fists, tenderly taking her hands in his before wrapping her in a hug, and she pulled him even closer. "Don't think about him, Lucy. I know you miss your family, and I know it's not much, but I'm your family now, and my family is your family if you want." Harry comforted her. "I know you are my family, and it's wonderful, but I just miss them. It hasn't got easier," Lucy said, her cheeks still tear-stained. "I know, Lou. I lost my parents too, and even with the doctor and the royals. I miss them with all my heart, and my Time Lord consciousness isolates me because I have so much extra knowledge. I didn't know how I would be able to cope at school, and then I met my kindred spirit." A kind, softly spoken, cute Lucy blushed at this girl who, like me, just seemed old for her age, like she'd seen more of life than just North London. And then, I had to go back to my time and I had to leave her behind. But then, while I hate the way it had to happen, I'm so glad that it did. She came back to me and I had my best friend back again. Harry explained. Thanks, Harry. I needed that. Lucy whispered into his shoulder. Good to know that we both agree that we are kindred spirits. The only water in the forest. Chapter 12. The only water in the forest. Except they don't have a word for pond. The only water in the forest is the river. The doctor will find your daughter, and he will care for her whatever it takes. And I know that. It's me. A melody. I'm your daughter. River song, A Good Man Goes to War. Location. Storm Cage Containment Facility. Undisclosed location. Time. May 51:59 CE.
Hi mmm.
Melody Pond, better known to her friends and family as River Song, hummed a haunting Gallifreyan lullaby to herself as she flipped idly through her TARDIS-shaped diary, but stopped dead when she realized what was coming. It was time to visit Hogwarts. It was time for Harry Potter's time of angels. Leo. A security alarm blared all through the galaxy's only ultra-maximum security prison asteroid, Storm Cage, as once again River Song packed her things into her various dimensionally transcendental pockets, slipping out of her cell, activating her vortex manipulator as she went, setting the temporal coordinates, and then in a harsh, white, electric flash and puff of smoke, River Song disappeared from the prison. Location. Forbidden Forest, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. September 1992 CE. River Song landed deep within a forest, next to a rather muddy, fast-flowing river. She smirked as she mused out loud. Me, in the forest, by a river. How ironic. She looked around to get her bearings, then walked forwards towards Hogwarts, and her husband, parents, and her pseudo-semi-sorta unofficially adopted son Amajigami. She shook her head. She had to stop thinking about Harry like that, the way that the doctor had described their relationship, and wondered where he was in his timeline right now. Location. The Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. September 1992 CE. At breakfast, Harry and Lucy stood at the head table both having an animated conversation with the doctor about their plans for the Christmas holidays. Which planets and which time streams, which universes, all the important details, Professor Snape listening in with interest, although trying hard to not look so, when the doors to the Great Hall flung open with a loud bang, and the two Time Lords could see the silhouette of a frizzy-haired, well-proportioned woman. They both turned to each other with a smirk. River, they said in unison, Harry adding, the three of us in one room, plus the master, this is going to be trouble, although he looked strangely pleased at the prospect. Hello, Hogwarts, River yelled, much like how a rock star would at a concert, and the students all around the tables looked on confusedly, while Harry and the doctor just shook their heads in bemusement. Finally Harry stood up straight. Hello, River. Your mum and dad are going to be down in just a moment, he called with a smirk as he anticipated the reaction from the assembled students, and got it, as they looked around confusedly trying to figure out which professors were this woman's parents. Things got even better for Harry as Amy and Rory walked in at that moment and River jumped up and down like a little kid, playing along with Harry's game. Hi, Mummy. Hi, Daddy, she yelled, running over to hug them both. Harry and the doctor couldn't hold it in anymore and both burst out laughing at the display River was putting on, and the obvious confusion of the student body. Location. History professor's office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. September 1992 CE. After the entertainment at breakfast, Harry, the doctor and River synchronized their diaries as Amy, Rory and Harry's friends watched on. Finally, Neville gave into confusion and asked, what are they doing? They're time travelers. They never meet in the right order. So, they are synchronizing their diaries. Rory said triumphantly, remembering the time the doctor had been killed by an earlier version of River as an older version of River watched on, being glad of, for once, being the one in the know about these things. So have you found your family, Harry? River asked one final question to finish the syncing. Yes, I have. You may address me as Your Royal Highness the Prince Harry James Charles Lewis, Duke of Gryffindor, Marquis Potter and Peverell, Earl of Monmouth, Baron Evans. Harry replied, making a show of acting pompous, even going so far as use his wand to conjure several Union flags, and music floated in from the ether. The sound of God save the Queen. Oh, of course, Your Highness. River giggled, over-exaggerating a curtsy. I do think you went just a little bit over the top there. Damn. I've been practicing that all week. A little too over the top. He whined. Just a little. River nodded, holding her hand up with her index finger and thumb a few millimeters apart. So why exactly are you here, dear Melodypond? Harry asked his longtime friend, and as he and the doctor had not long ago discovered, wife of the doctor. I'm a bit early, River started, before adding under her breath. Unlike some people I know. Harry snorted at this, and River continued. My sources tell me that this year is a big temporal tipping point and that you will need all the help you can get here. Anyway, how's that girlfriend of yours? Lucy, River asked with a knowing smirk. Harry's not my boyfriend, Lucy yelled from beside Harry before crossing her arms and pouting. Yet, River interjected, causing both Harry and Lucy to blush, but neither denied it, leading to a large smirk from every other occupant of the room. Location: Headmaster's Office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Harry heard it too, Headmaster. There are mysterious voices in the walls. This is not a good sign. Are you investigating? The doctor asked Albus Dumbledore, who looked, as usual, infuriatingly calm. I am fully aware of that, my dear doctor, and I am investigating. But this school is very large and I don't pretend to know every inch of it, was Dumbledore's only response, and the doctor left the knowledgeable but infuriating man to his musings. Location: Chamber of Secrets under Hogwarts, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Section: Speak to Me, Slytherin. Greatest of the Hogwarts Four. Section: The young girl hissed to the statue of Slytherin, and the mouth slowly opened and the beast emerged. The girl stared impassive, her eyes rolled back in her head, only the whites of her eyes showing. The large basilisk slid past the girl, ready to protect the school, but then a blast of pure magic was released from within the young girl, and the basilisk instantly became a killer, its primary mission pushed to the back of its mind, its sentience forgotten. Within the mind of the girl, the sentience of Tom Riddle's diary smirked as he thought of the damage he could cause, the havoc he could wreak at Hogwarts. Location: Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Harry and Lucy sat under a weeping willow far away from the prying eyes of Hogwarts Castle as Hedwig sat above them, as if she could protect them from anything that would invade their privacy. Lucy was once again thinking about her family. It was her father's birthday after all, and crying. Her head on Harry's shoulder, and neither one of them noticed the small lady beetle which flew around their heads before flying away in the direction of the outer walls. Slowly but surely, Lucy's sobs abated, and Harry started to stand up, saying, Come on, Lou, we better head up to the dorms. We have classes tomorrow. Lucy just nodded her head, wiping her eyes as Harry wrapped his arms around her shoulders and guided her towards Gryffindor Tower. Location: The Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. The next morning Harry was eating his toast and marmalade when Hermione thrust the morning edition of the Daily Prophet into his hands, and he was able to look at the front page as Lucy leaned over curiously, and both opened their mouths in shock. Loving by the Lake, by Rita Skeeter, Special Correspondent. Following the story from June this year, this reporter can reveal that the destiny-bonded pair, the Duke of Gryffindor and Lucy Pevensey Potter, continue to grow closer, leading to speculation that a magical bond marriage between the two is very close to coming to fruition. The young pair of Gryffindor lions were last night seen down on the edge of Hogwarts Lake, where it seemed that the second eldest grandchild of Her Majesty the Queen was comforting a tearful Miss Pevensey Potter. Some sources suggesting this was due to a spate of recent disagreements with the youngest son of the Earl Weasley, who is currently serving as Senior Undersecretary to the Minister for Magic. The rest of the page was taken up by a large wizarding photo of the two down by the lake, and both second years looked puzzled at how the reporter could have gotten the picture, as they had not seen anyone down by the lake at all. Slowly, more and more students turned to look at the two Gryffindors. Harry and Lucy looked around at everyone staring at them, then blushed, looking at each other, conveying the same silent message, "Why us?" After about 5 minutes, they both were tired of the stairs, and both stood, leaving the great hall to get their books for first class, which was Charms with the Ravenclaws. Soul Sister. Chapter 13. Soul Sister. When you grow up, you should be just like you. Lucy Pevensey, The Chronicles of Narnia. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. FOX Walden Media. Location: 3rd floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. A seemingly normal year at Hogwarts turned sinister when two young Ravenclaw first years were exploring the castle during their lunch break, and one of the pair vanished into thin air while walking along the 3rd floor corridor, 5 minutes beforehand. Location: 4th floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE, and reappeared 1 floor up and on the opposite side of the school to where he vanished, and 5 minutes before he disappeared, immediately falling unconscious. Location: 2nd floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Harry, Lucy and Hermione were walking around the 2nd floor waiting for their next class, when a scream rang out from around the next corner, and as they followed the noise, they saw a strange sight. There was a deformed statue touching a young first year, who subsequently disappeared, and the same first year suddenly staggering up behind them, and collapsing in a heap. "Shit!" was all Harry could say. "Harry! Language!" Lucy said in reply, hitting him on the arm. This is very not good," Harry said, closing his eyes in concentration and sending a psychic message to the doctor. Moments later, the telltale wheezing of the TARDIS announced the arrival of the doctor, and after Harry explained what happened, the doctor's reaction exactly mirrored Harry's. Location: History Professor's Office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. "That's why you're here, isn't it, River? This is my time of angels, isn't it?" Harry asked Riversong as Harry, Lucy, Hermione, River and the doctor sat in the doctor's office after destroying the angel, with great difficulty. "Yes, Harry, it is your time of angels," River said with solemnity. "Hogwarts is under attack from within. The angels are not at full strength and can only send someone a matter of seconds into the past, and a matter of meters in distance, but the magic in Hogwarts will quickly bring them back to full strength, and when that happens it is only a matter of time before Hogwarts falls to its first threat." Location: 7th floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Harry thought about the reports that a student had been petrified on the 2nd floor, and another found collapsed on the 4th. The second attack was obviously the work of the angels, but the first he wasn't so sure about. He looked out the window at the pelting rain and saw the reflection of Lucy looking fearfully at a stone statue reaching out towards her. Harry sprung into action, and almost without his realizing it, a sword with a ruby-encrusted hilt appeared in his hand as he charged around the corner, using the magically strengthened sword to destroy the angel, the sword slicing through the rock like a knife through butter. "Oh, thank you, Harry. I was walking along and before I knew it the angel was standing over me, and I was just about to blink, when you turned up, and you saved me, Harry," Lucy said tearfully, leaning up to kiss Harry's cheek, before burying her head in his shoulder, neither one of them noticing the gold flash that enveloped the two of them momentarily, or the new phoenix which had flashed into existence. Location: Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Harry and his group of friends were sitting in a circle under their willow tree, chatting about the attacks on the 2nd and 4th floors, as well as the failed attack on Lucy. While seated there, a young Ravenclaw with flowing blonde hair and a faraway look on her face skipped past and greeted their Royal Highness the Duke and Duchess of Gryffindor, which had the group looking at each other confusedly. At that moment, A dark gray phoenix appeared out of a black cloud which had appeared in mid-air, before dropping a scroll in Lucy's lap, and then perched on the lower branches of the willow, trilling a calming song. Lucy broke the Gringotts seal and unfurled the scroll, at which point a second scroll fell out. Your Royal Highness, the Gringotts Department of Inheritances wishes to congratulate you both on your soul bonding, and in accordance with the spiritual laws that govern the Goblin Nation and the realms of magical Britain, are equally pleased to congratulate you on your marriage, and the former Miss Pevensy's emancipation. Lucy, your style shall henceforth be in short Her Royal Highness Lucy, Duchess of Gryffindor, or in full Her Royal Highness the Princess Harold James Charles Lewis, Duchess of Gryffindor, Marchioness Potter and Peveril, Countess of Monmouth, Baroness Evans, and together your style shall be Their Royal Highness the Duke and Duchess of Gryffindor. Once again, congratulations. Princess Lucy, please also find enclosed a list comprising the contents of your inheritance from the Friends of Narnia Trust. May your gold flow, and your enemies cower before you, Stronghammer. Harry and Lucy looked at each other, then at the rest of the group and said in harmony, Here we go again. Lucy looked up at the dark gray phoenix. Excuse me, Mr. Phoenix, but would you happen to be a shadow phoenix? I remember them from Narnia, she asked the regal creature. 7 of the group saw only a phoenix nodding its head and trilling happily, but Harry and Lucy heard the creature's voice in their minds. I am indeed, my queen, and yes, Narnia is the true realm of the phoenixes. It is an honor to serve the High Queen of Narnia and her consort. The phoenix bowed forward, its wings out wide, Harry and Lucy blushing at the word consort. And what is your name, noble phoenix? Harry added his own question. I am Odysseus, the phoenix replied. Harry and Lucy both smiled at each other. The English translation of this name was not lost on either on them. So if we can both hear you in our minds, does that mean we can speak to each other in the same way? Lucy asked, ever curious. Why, yes, of course. Odysseus said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Odysseus's meet and greet was interrupted by Professor McGonagall arriving and asking the new bondmates to follow her. Location: Transfiguration Professor's office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. 2 12-year-old Gryffindors followed their head of house into her office. Your Highnesses, Professor McGonagall said as she directed Harry and Lucy into a seat, sitting opposite them and placing her glasses on. I have here an official letter from Gringotts which I received earlier today regarding you two. Here the professor removed her glasses, holding them in her hand as she continued, as deputy headmistress and your head of house, it is my job to inform you that as a legally married couple you have the right to a private dormitory. I don't think either of us is ready for that, Professor. Harry cut the professor off as Lucy nodded in affirmation. Very well, however. The Hogwarts Charter states that any married couple not sharing bedding and accommodation must have access to shared bathroom facilities. Seeing Harry about to interject, the professor raised her voice slightly. Before you try to argue, Your Highness, whether you use these facilities or not is up to you. The Charter predates any current belief of sexual acceptabilities, shall we say. I will, however, grant you a grace period. Your new accommodations will be made available to you both at the start of next year, as you will have private individual rooms from next year anyway. But, Professor, surely it's not appropriate. Harry tried to argue. Your Highness, McGonagall raised her voice, cutting him off. Propriety aside, it is part of the Hogwarts Charter and is not negotiable. You don't have to use the shared bathroom, but it will be provided to you next year just the same. Location: the Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: October 1992 CE. Lucy wandered down to the Great Hall and took a seat next to Harry, starting to make her morning cuppa when Harry handed her the early morning prophet. She finished making her tea and took her first sip, nearly choking as she read the headline. Pevensey Potter Soul Bond Finalized, by Rita Skeeter, Special Correspondent. After months of speculation, the early morning prophet can give exclusive confirmation that the destiny bond between one Lucy Pevensey Potter and Harry James, Duke of Gryffindor, has indeed matured into a full soul bond, resulting in the couple being now considered officially married. Official communications from Gringotts to the Ministry of Magic contain no details as to the completion of the bond, but investigation suggests that Harry saved the new Duchess's life from an unknown threat. More details to follow. Why? Lucy asked. And how does this Skeeter woman keep finding out details of things that have no other witnesses? I dunno, Lou. We should look into that. Harry said to his best friend, well, wife now. Lions, Witches, the Wardrobe. Chapter 14. Lions, Witches, and the Wardrobe. Why don't they teach logic at these schools? Diggory Kirk, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, HarperCollins. Location: Cooks, Cooks County, Albania, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. The rat ran through the city of Cooks in Albania under the cover of darkness, stopping occasionally to rear up on its hind legs to sniff the air cautiously. In the dim light, it could just be noticed that the rat seemed to be missing a claw on its forepaw. This seemingly inconsequential feature for a rat may be enough to give away this particular rat's dark secret. Location: a back alley, Cardiff, Wales, Earth. Time: November 1981 CE. Master Auror Alastair Moody and his partner Senior Auror Sirius Orion Black, Marquis Black, were on the hunt for Peter Pettigrew, the man wanted for being an accessory to the murder of James and Lily Potter, at the hands of Lord Voldemort earlier that week. The pair found Pettigrew in a back alley in Cardiff, and despite Peter's lack of magical talent, he was able to hold his own long enough to plan his attack. As Moody sent a reductor curse towards him, Pettigrew cut off his own finger, transforming into his animagus rat form, and slinked away into the shadows. Location: Cooks, Cooks County, Albania, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. The rat had been traveling throughout Europe for the last 11 years, searching for his master in every dump and black hole and black forest he could find, and now he was heading towards the T, a place legend has it which has held a vengeful demon. That had to be where his master was. Location: the T National Park, Albania, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. The rat-like man that was Peter Pettigrew cowered before the specter that was his lord and master, Voldemort. Pettigrew had brought with him a stunned muggle, ready for his lord to possess long enough to get them both back to England. After Voldemort finished berating Pettigrew for taking so long, he possessed the filthy muggle, and using almost all of the body's strength he operated to Little Hangleton in England and had just enough time to leave the body before it expired. But it was enough. He was back in England, and now he could prepare to take the world by storm, prepare to exact my revenge on Harry Potter. He finished aloud, causing Pettigrew to jump in shock. Location: Founders Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. Harry and Lucy were in the common room of the Founders Tower comparing notes on a potions essay and discussing when Professor Kirk would be starting their lessons properly, having been mostly getting them to speak about life experiences, when Professor McGonagall entered, leading a badly scarred man in a slightly shabby Royal Air Force uniform, his insignia showing he was a squadron leader. Harry, your grandmother has, given your apparent fame in the wizarding world, appointed you a private secretary, and he will be given lodgings here at the school. May I present Squadron Leader, the Most Honorable the Marquis Desgrange and Baron Lupin, Royal Air Force. At this, the Air Force officer also snapped into a salute, and once Harry nodded to him, he spoke. If I may, Your Highness, I was a good friend of your father, and was a prefect with your mother in our 5th year. It is an honor to meet Your Highness, and if I'm not much mistaken, this young lady would be your wife, the Duchess. Lucy, Duchess of Gryffindor. A pleasure to meet you, Squadron Leader. Lucy stepped forward now, remembering her time as Queen in Narnia as she nodded to the Air Force officer. Harry, Lucy, and Lupin, or Remus, as he had asked that they call him, was regaling the pair with stories of Harry's father's exploits at school, and the young Duke and Duchess were laughing hysterically. You mean, he really turned Dumbledore's beard pink and gave Snape floor-length red ringlets? Harry managed to choke out before giving in to more laughter. After the three managed to control their laughter, Harry moved the conversation onto other things. So Remus, what do you do in the Air Force? Well, before being TAD to your household, I was a pilot in the number 32 Squadron. I flew a lot of VIPs around Britain and the world, including your grandmother Harry. that is to say. The Queen Remus explained, "You mean you're that Lupin? She mentioned you were a werewolf, but that you actively work to protect others before you transform. It is truly a pleasure," Harry said warmly to the man that had been his father's friend. Location: Wizengamot Chamber, Ministry of Magic Headquarters under Whitehall, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. Wayu. Let us call the Lords Wizengamot of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in Parliament assembled forth here today. Gentleman Usher of the Gold Rod Jonathan Carmichael said as the Lords stood there in their ceremonial plum-colored robes to enter the chamber. State your party stance and prepare for ministerial elections. The Viscount Dawlish, Conservative, was the first to enter the chamber to find no seats on the long oval-shaped benches, save for one end where the seats of the officials were found. But as soon as Dawlish entered the room properly, a red plume of smoke deposited a chair on the back bench to the right of the speaker as they would sit. Two others followed him before the Viscount Scamander became the first Liberal. A blue plume of smoke depositing a chair on the back bench to the left of the speaker. There was a fairly even spread of members choosing either ideology, until the head of the House Davis entered the chamber, throwing a curveball. The Viscountess Davis. "I sit on the crossbench," she said, calmly sitting down when a pure white plume of smoke deposited a chair at the far end of the chamber from the speaker. The various members of the Wizengamot chose a side of the metaphorical fence, until when all was said and done the Liberal side of the room had a majority of 35 to 21 with 3 on the crossbench, as the chamber shortened to accommodate everyone within hearing distance of the speaker. Honorable Lords and Ladies of the Wizengamot, presenting Her Majesty Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the magical kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith. The usher announced as everyone in the chamber stood and bowed to the sovereign. "You may be seated," the Queen instructed as she took her seat on the top tier at the same end as the speaker. The usher spoke again, acting as speaker, announcing the Honorable Madame Amelia Bones, Chief Justice of the Wizengamot. Madame Bones took the speaker's chair, at least until the official part of the meeting was over and new officials had been selected, and spoke. "I now call to order the 1992 Wizengamot election meeting. I note that the Liberals hold a majority of 35 to 21 with 3 on the crossbench and 1 seat vacant. I therefore call upon nominations from the Liberals for Minister for Magic." After several moments of discussion, only one name was put forward. Arthur Weasley stood up and addressed Madame Bones. "Madam Speaker, I nominate the Earl Diggory." "I second the motion," Remus said, upon standing. After Madame Bones called for a vote, passed unanimously, Amos Diggory stood in the center of the room and addressed the Queen. "Your Majesty, with a majority of 35 to 21, I ask you permission to form government within the House of Lords Wizengamot." He stood, praying silently even as he knew it was a mere formality. "So granted, Earl Diggory. May you govern well and uphold our laws." The Queen answered after several tense moments. "I charge you to govern our magical realm from this election until the next." After Amos took his seat as Minister for Magic, several more elections resulted in Arthur Weasley becoming the first senior undersecretary in 350 years to also be a member of the Wizengamot itself. Tiberius Marquis Ogden remained as Speaker with Gawain Viscount Robards as his deputy. Rufus Viscount Scrimgeour became the new Chancellor, and Albus Dumbledore retained his place as Chief Warlock, having held the post since 1944. After a tense meeting, the second election in as many years was finished, and with any luck this government would last the full term for once. Location: Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. Down by Harry's favorite weeping willow on the banks of the Hogwarts Lake, universally recognized as Harry's tree by the first years of Hogwarts, and many of the upperclassmen too, Lucy leaned back against the trunk of the wizened tree talking to Gryffindor first years Ginny Weasley and Zara Phillips, Harry's cousin, waiting for the Wizengamot lords and ladies, and budding parliamentarians, to return from their election meeting in London. "So what was being a queen like?" Zara asked Lucy after being told about Narnia's reality, and Lucy's oligarchy there. "Is," Lucy corrected, Once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen. Lucy recited, placing extra emphasis on the word always. But being a Narnian queen in Narnia is such a special experience. Narnia is so much more medieval than England, so the governments are very different. I think that diplomacy is probably the most different, yes, that and marriage. Lucy added thoughtfully. Marriage? Ginny piped up, quizzical look on her face. Yes, marriage. In Narnia, a man would go to a girl's father, or in mine and Susan's case, elder brother, and ask if they could court the girl, and after a certain amount of time, they would become betrothed before they would marry. I remember the only time that I was ever courted. Flashback. Location. Castle Cair Paravel Peninsula. Kingdom of Narnia. Narnia. Time. 1013 New York. Queen Lucy the Valiant of Narnia sat at the head table of the expansive Great Hall in Cair Paravel, the seat of state for the Kingdom of Narnia and the larger Narnian Empire, patiently sipping her traditional morning coffee and reading through several of the edicts waiting to be signed off by one or all of the monarchs. The youngest queen, now 21, known as the Queen of the Silver Crown, looked up at the clip-clop sound of the cloven hooves of her best and dearest friend and advisor, the Fawn Tumnus, on the flagstone floor of the hall. Yes, Mr. Tumnus? Lucy asked as the Fawn sat down beside her. What can I do for you today? Your Majesty. Peter bade me inform you that the Lord Dillon of Archenland has come before him today to ask permission to court your good and royal self. Tumnus answered in his usual formal way. Permission to court me? Lucy asked inquisitively, standing to go meet this Lord Dillon. Enter. Peter's voice commanded regally after Lucy knocked on the door to his study. Lucy entered the warm room and walked into a meeting between her two brothers Edmund the Just and Peter the Magnificent, and a third man, no doubt the Lord Dillon. Sister, this is His Grace the Lord Dillon of Archenland. Peter introduced, gesturing to the newcomer. Dillon stood and moved over to Lucy, kneeling in front of her, kissing her hand, causing her to blush as he muttered, An honor, Your Majesty. Never have I met someone so beautiful. Location. Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. November 1992 CE. So you were married? What about James? Zara asked. No, I wasn't married. Dillon seemed quite the gentleman, and Peter allowed him to court me, but after it was revealed that he was a traitor to Aslan during Rabadash's folly and the Battle of Anvard, I never allowed him near me again, and King Lune of Archenland had him jailed for life. Lucy explained indignantly. Harry is the only boy I've ever loved. Lucy thought to herself, blushing inwardly as she realized her own thoughts. Suddenly, Lucy heard a faint voice, almost as if it was coming from a long way off. Ugh, that meeting was such a bore. I bet Lucy is done by our tree, so I'll head down that way now. Harry? Lucy asked out loud, looking around frantically. Both Ginny and Zara looked confusedly at the older girl. Harry's not here, Lucy, Ginny said. But I heard him talking. Lucy trailed off, pondering. She decided to try something. Harry, yes, I am down at our tree with Ginny and Zara. Bring everyone down. She thought this, wondering if they really were able to talk in their minds. Location. Hogwarts Road, Hogsmeade, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. November 1992 CE. What do you mean by Lucy asked you to take us down to the lake? You haven't seen Lucy since this morning. Hermione asked Harry. I just heard her ask, in my head, and don't go saying it was someone else, because it was her. I could feel it with my very soul. Harry said, eyes blazing somewhat. Location. Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time. November 1992 CE. A short time later, Harry led Draco, Susan, Hermione, Daphne, Neville and Hannah into the privacy of the Weeping Willow, trying to sneak up behind Lucy, only to have her say, "Hello, Harry," before he even got within a meter. How does she do that? Harry thought to himself, only to be shocked even more when Lucy replied out loud. Because, Harry dear, she said this with an overtly flirty grin, I have already realized that you and I are able to converse within our own minds. Like this. She finished mentally as Harry's eyes widened in realization. Shortly before those of Susan, Hermione, Daphne and Hannah, while Ginny and Zara just smirked, Lucy having already told them of her suspicions. Plus, I've always been able to sense you, well, mostly. We're kindred spirits and soulmates, remember? Lucy added as Ginny and Zara sighed wistfully at this. Location: History Professor's Office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: November 1992 CE. You know, Harry, we haven't given our TARDISes a decent runabout for a while. What about a TARDIS race? The doctor said with a glint in his eye as he, Harry, Lucy, River, Amy and Rory sat around the small coffee table in the doctor's office, enjoying afternoon tea. Before the doctor had finished his sentence, Harry had pulled out his TARDIS key, and his TARDIS materialized in front of them, the outside currently looking like the wardrobe portal into Narnia. Come on, Harry. That stands out worse than a police box, the doctor said. True, but 1, my TARDIS chameleon circuit still works, 2, it doesn't look out of place in a dormitory, and 3, Lucy here is a mite sentimental. Harry said in a fake lecture tone, receiving a light swat from Lucy. Anyway, me, Lucy and River against you, Amy and Rory. First one to New Earth, 5,100,000,000 CE wins. Deal, the doctor said eagerly. Ready, set, go. The two yelled together, before pulling their teammates towards their TARDISes and setting them on course to their destination. Location: Harry's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. I'm impressed, Harry. Especially the photo of you and your soulmate, River said, putting particular emphasis on the word soul mate as the control room of Harry's TARDIS shook wildly as Harry continued piling on as much speed as he dared. Okay, here we are. Ladies, hold on, Harry yelled as the TARDIS came to a jolting stop, throwing them all to the ground. Harry jumped up and ran outside, only to bump heads with the doctor as they both left their TARDISes at the exact same moment, running headlong into each other. Wunderkind, Chapter 15, Wunderkind. I am a magnet for all kinds of deeper wonderment. I am a Wunderkind. Alanis Morissette, Wunderkind, The Chronicles of Narnia. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe soundtrack. Location: Founders Tower Classroom, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. Okay, class. So I'm sure you've all been wondering why I've been getting you all to tell life stories. Diggory Kirk asked his small class of 9 second years, seeing the affirmative nods. Well, learning deep magic requires complete trust between the teacher and student, or else the magic will be wild and uncontrollable. People in this world who can harness the deep magic are generally considered elementals, for that is one of the keys to deep magic. Diggory went into lecture mode now, with only Harry and Lucy having any idea what he was truly talking about. In Narnia and many other worlds, there are 7 elements, the traditionally held 4 of earth, air, fire, and water. Then there is shadow, light, and darkness. These extra 3 elements have special significance, shadow falling somewhere between light and dark. The most powerful proponents of the deep magic can harness all elements, but none to date have controlled darkness for long before being corrupted. By using deep magic, you are able to produce thought magic relatively effortlessly because you are channeling not from your own core but from the world's latent magic. This is why, as Lucy will tell you, magic is stronger in some worlds. Lucy nodded in agreement. Now a short exercise for you all. I want you to try and find a way to focus the latent magic around you and use it to write your name on the blackboard. I don't expect you will get it straight away, but by the end of the week I will teach you the basics of how to do it. This is just to test your pre-existing connection with the deep magic, the professor said, looking meaningfully at Oslin's dear one and the dear one's dear one. Diggory looked on proudly as 2 pieces of chalk floated up and working together sketched a royal monogram with a J and an L. The royal monogram of Harry and Lucy, followed by their names in neat cursive script. One piece, he assumed was the one Lucy was controlling, added a heart between their names as the bondmates opened their eyes and blushed as they looked at the chalk words. Diggory smiled, clapping his hands. Excellent, you two are ein Paar von Wunderkind, Diggory said, using German momentarily because the German described it much better than the English translation, a pair of Wonder Kids child prodigies. Location: History Professor's Office, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. So, I found a way to track the weeping angels, Harry told River and the doctor after his deep magic lesson had finished. We'll use your timey-wimey detector, since the angels always make time go screwy when they are around. Brilliant, the doctor said, darting into his TARDIS to find it. He returned triumphantly moments later, holding the timey-wimey detector aloft, and Harry jumped up and cried, Allons Y! Location: 5th floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. Come on Harry, River, this way, the doctor said, running ahead of the two with his timey-wimey detector outstretched. Location: Astronomy Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. Damn, the signal was here, the doctor said, before the trio of time travelers were off again as the timey-wimey detector starting beeping and whirring again. Location: Greenhouse 1, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. The doctor, River and Harry raced past the greenhouse, still following the signal. Location: 2nd floor corridor, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. Harry and River slumped against the wall, looking at each other. Then the doctor as he paced back and forwards in front of the entrance to the girls' bathroom. Brilliant, the doctor said with a grin. The weeping angels are coming from in here. He continued, pointing into the girls' bathroom. Only the doctor could be excited about aliens in a girl's bathroom, River said with a smirk, and Harry snorted mirthfully. Okay, enough of the wisecracks. Are we going to beat these weeping angels and goodness knows what else or not? The doctor asked impatiently, before Harry and River nodded in agreement. Good, let's go. They strode into the bathroom, and seeing a snake on the sink, Harry took charge. I wonder... Sorry, doctor, but I've always been better than you when it comes to languages. Harry started before seamlessly shifting to Parseltongue section open. Section. There was the deafening noise of porcelain grating on flagstone and metal as the huge circle of sinks separated, and one dropped into the ground, revealing a large pipe. Section stairs section, Harry demanded in Parseltongue, figuring it couldn't hurt, and was satisfied to see that the pipe had transformed into a spiral staircase, and the three time travelers descended into the murky depths of Hogwarts Castle. Location: Chamber of Secrets under Hogwarts, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. The trio slowly walked forwards, their footsteps crunching over the dried rat skeletons that littered the floor of the passageway. Soon enough, they came across a large snake skin at least 50 feet long, a skin that looked like it had been there for at least a month. Somewhat shaken by the size, they continued onwards towards their goal, the lair of the weeping angels. River had her handheld computer out and was scanning for any radiation or energy spikes, which could be harmful to them. Harry had his wand out, just in case, and the doctor continued leading them forward, following the time-wimey detector until they reached a dead end with a round hatch sealed by a decorative lock made up of 7 copper snakes. Section open section, Harry said again in Parseltongue, and an 8th copper snake wound its way around the outside of the hatch as the other snakes pulled back, and finally with an ominous howl, the hatch swung outwards, and they could see into the chamber. Lines of large snake statues lined a puddle-covered pathway which ended in front of what had to be described as a stone depiction on some old bloke. Probably Salazar Slytherin, the doctor mused. The master was always saying how full of himself Slytherin was. But what really shocked the group was the young girl. The doctor recognized her as a Hufflepuff first year, that was looking up at the statue and speaking Parseltongue. Section speak to me. Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts 4. Section, the ominous hissing voice said. Seeing the large snake slithering out of the statue's rapidly opening mouth, the three kicked into action. Harry stunned the girl, while River fired 5 shots from her gun, 3 bouncing off the snout, while 2 completely destroyed the serpent's eyes, inadvertently removing this snake, known as a basilic's, secret weapon. Harry had started running towards the girl to check if she was all right, barely noticing the black diary on the floor beneath the basilisk. Using its sense of hearing, the large snake reared up to bite Harry, but a loud buzzing erupted from the doctor's sonic screwdriver, giving Harry enough time to swing the large sword that had once again appeared in his hands, and impale it right through the roof of the mouth, pulling it out, and diving to the side as the fang of the basilisk, easily as thick as Harry's arm, stabbed clean through the diary lying unnoticed on the floor, as a piercing scream was heard and a black mist was ripped from the young girl before it vanished, taking the scream with it. Harry, River and the doctor continued picking their way through the network of pipes and tunnels, the doctor swinging the timey-wimey detector all around the walls, searching for any signs of weeping angels, while River held her blaster ready, Harry holding the sword in front along with his wand, tip lit. Over several hours the trio systematically rid the tunnels of weeping angels, especially since when it comes to the angels 6 eyes are better than 2. After the last blip on the timey-wimey detector was taken care of, the 3 slumped to the ground and caught their breaths. Location: Founders Tower, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: January 1993 CE. "Hey Lou!" Harry called to his now wife as he clambered through the portrait hole into the Founders Tower. "We cleaned out the chamber. All the angels are gone." Lucy sighed in relief and looked over to Harry, who moved to sit beside her. "Do you want to get away for a while?" Harry asked, and when Lucy nodded he raised his TARDIS key and squeezed, both children laughing as his TARDIS appeared in its trunk form, flickering slightly and taking the shape of a giant applewood wardrobe. Harry stood and, offering his hand, led Lucy into the ship, which faded out of sight again, bound for the Eye of Orion. Tempus Fugit. Chapter 16. Tempus Fugit. Just because everything's changing doesn't mean it's never been this way before. All you can do is try to know who your friends are as you head off to the war. Regina Spektor, The Call, The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian soundtrack. Location: The Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: February 1993 CE. And so it gives me great pleasure, on this first day of February 1993, to award the special award for services to the school to Harry Potter, Dr. John Smith and Professor Riversong, for ridding this school of the plagues of the basilisk and the other monsters of the Chamber of Secrets. Dumbledore announced to the school from behind his lectern, as the 3 award recipients stood beside, nodding in gratitude at the applause from most of the school, with the exception, perhaps, of some of the Slytherin upperclassmen. Location: The Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: May 1993 CE. After all that happened in the first 3 months of the school year, the rest of term from New Year's to June passed without incident. The few days after the chamber incident, very few students got much work done at all, much preferring to gossip, or badgering Harry to tell them exactly what happened. Harry stoically refused to tell anyone except his closest friends. Shortly after this, though, the school began to get back to normal and the teachers started to gear students up towards the exams. None more so than Professors McGonagall and Flitwick. The students found themselves increasingly tired as the exams approached, until the day on the first exam, and the whole year group found themselves waiting outside the Great Hall on the Monday of exam week. The professors instructed them to line up alphabetically by surname, before they were escorted into the hall and directed to their seat. As they were settled, Professor McGonagall began to speak as the doctor and Professor Flitwick walked up and down each of the 4 aisles, reaching into the box they carried to give each student an bright blue-colored quill. "Okay, second years. Dr. Smith and Professor Flitwick are now providing each of you with an anti-cheating quill, which must be used during these examinations. The format of each subject's examinations is thus. In the morning there will be a 2-hour theoretical portion, followed by a 3-hour break, 2 in today's case, before the practical portion of the assessment, which will take place in the afternoon. For astronomy, however, the theoretical portion will be 1 hour in the afternoon, followed by a 1-hour practical portion at midnight. You will have no exam the day after astronomy. Today's exams will be charms and astronomy." Next, McGonagall flicked her wand to the pile of exams on the table behind her, and they all flew to each student. "Your charms theory exam starts now. You have 2 hours. You may start writing now." McGonagall stated, flicking her wand next at the large hourglass at the front of the hall, which tipped over and the sand began to trickle through. Harry opened his exam paper and found the first question. 1. What is the correct incantation and wand movement for the featherweight charm? What, if any, objects are resistant to this charm? 3 marks. Harry smiled and began to write. All around the hall, there was a scratching of quills as each and every student was writing as fast as their hands would allow them. On and on it went until with just 1 minute to go, Harry was reading through, then answering the last question. 34. What charm can be used to cancel most spell effects? What is its short incantation? What is its long incantation? 2 marks. Harry almost yawned reading this question, probably the easiest of the exam. He finished the final answer with a flourish, just as the master said, quills down. The second years were allowed to file out of the Great Hall and into the grounds after the professors had collected the exam papers, and were told to be ready in 2 hours for their practical assessment. Location: the Great Hall, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: June 1993 CE. Your heads of house will now hand out final exam marks for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th years, and the subject selection forms for 2nd and 5th years. Professor Dumbledore announced the morning before the farewell feast, as Professors McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, and Snape walked among the students handing them each a scroll. All students, please take note that everyone is required in full robes, including wizards' hats, for the 7th year. Graduation and then the farewell feast in the Great Hall at precisely 5 o'clock. Dumbledore added after the results had been handed out. Location: Hogwarts Lake, Hogwarts School, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: June 1993 CE. Harry waited until he and his friends made it down to their tree before he unrolled his scroll and read. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. 2nd year examinations. Harry James Charles Lewis, Duke of Gryffindor. Gryffindor House Astronomy. Theory O, Practical O. Overall O, Charms. Theory E, Practical O. Overall E, Defense. Theory E, Practical O. Overall E. Herbology. Theory A. Practical E. Overall A. History of Magic O. Muggle Studies O. Potions. Theory E. Practical E. Overall E. Transfiguration. Theory E. Practical E. Overall E. Your Highness, Hogwarts wishes to congratulate you on the highest recorded scores in 2nd year astronomy and history, and also for finishing 1st in history of magic and 3rd overall in your year. Please find over your subject selection form for 3rd year. Sincerely, Professor McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Each of his friends had similar letters: Hermione topping Charms, Hannah topping Transfiguration, Neville topping Herbology, Daphne Potions, Susan Defense, and Lucy topping Muggle Studies, despite being some 50 years out of her original timeline. Harry then unrolled the second piece of paper, the subject selection form. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Subject selection form. 3rd year. Harry James Charles Lewis, Duke of Gryffindor. Gryffindor House. All 3rd year students must complete STR 301 Astronomy, not required special dispensation. HRM 301 Charms, Data 301 Defense, Herb 301. Herbology, History 301, History of Magic, MEG 301, Muggle Studies, PTNS 301, Potions, TRFG 301, Transfiguration. You have been chosen to complete Magi 307, Deep Magics of the Worlds. Please place a tick next to each of the following elective subjects you wish to complete, no more than 4, and then sign the form below. 3rd through 5th year subjects. ALCH 301 Alchemical Fundamentals. ARIT 301 Arithmancy. ANCT 301 Introduction to Ancient Runes. MART 301 Magical Art Concepts. Magi 301 Magical Theory Basics. 3rd through 7th year subjects. ANCT 302 Ancient Studies. CARE 301 Care of Magical Creatures. DV 301 Divination. LMT 301 Elemental Magics. Lang 3XX Various Language Courses. Contact your head of house. MLAW 301 Magical Laws and Governance. MMUS 301 Magical Music. Please note that Elemental Magics and Languages subjects are delivered through Private School Hours tutorial. Signature. After discussing it, the whole group decided to select Arithmancy and Ancient Runes from the 3rd to 5th year list and Ancient Studies and Magical Laws and Governance from the 3rd to 7th year list. As Harry ticked the 4 subjects and signed his name, The parchment vanished with a faint pop and a new parchment appeared in its place with an equally faint pop. This new parchment read, Harry James Charles Lewis, Duke of Gryffindor. You have enrolled in 4 electives for the 1993-94 school year. Your full course load is as follows. Magi 307 Deep Magics of the Worlds, CHRM 301 Charms, Data 301 Defense Herb 301 Herbology History 301 History of Magic MUG 301 Muggle Studies PTNS 301 Potions TRFG 301 Transfiguration ARIT 301 Arithmancy, NCT 301 Introduction to Ancient Runes ANCT 302 Ancient Studies, MLAW 301 Magical Laws and Governance. Please ensure you buy the correct textbooks when the book list is published. This is a maximal course load a student can undertake and I shall be in contact with you regarding time management. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Harry just had to smirk at the instantaneous receipt like a magical version of email, almost probably more effective though. Location: Hogwarts Road, Hogsmeade, near Aviemore, Scotland, Earth. Time: June 1993 CE. Harry, Lucy, Hermione and Susan shared a carriage from the school down to Hogsmeade Station, with Daphne, Draco, Neville, Hannah and Tracy in another. When they arrived at the station at 10 minutes to 9, there was the gleaming red steam engine of the Hogwarts Express looking, as usual, like something out of a fairy tale. As they walked towards the train, a blonde woman who seemed somewhat familiar to Harry for some reason could be heard asking Hagrid where she could find Professor Dumbledore, and telling him that she was applying for the Care of Magical Creatures position. The group of friends made their way to a compartment at the very back of the train, and they were soon joined by Ginny, Zara and their friend Luna Lovegood, a charming, if strange, dirty blonde-haired witch. Location: King's Cross Railway Station, Camden Islington, London, England, Earth. Time: June 1993 CE. Hours later, the Hogwarts Express had finally pulled in to platform 9 3/4, and the various students started going their own way. Harry and Lucy waving to their friends as Harry opened his trunk and jumped down into the console room of his TARDIS, followed shortly by Lucy. Location: Harry's TARDIS. Time: unspecified. So where are we going, Harry? The palace? Lucy asked after her graceful landing. No, not right now. I thought we might go on a little summer tour. Where on earth are we going then, Harry? She asked before realizing just how stupid that comment was between two people who had crossed dimensions. Somewhere I've always wanted to go, but have never had a chance to. Next stop. Harry paused for dramatic effect as the TARDIS shuddered onwards. Summer 1 Narnia Calling. From Chapter 16. Where on earth are we going then, Harry? She asked before realizing just how stupid that comment was between two people who had crossed dimensions. Somewhere I've always wanted to go, but have never had a chance to. Next stop. Harry paused for dramatic effect as the TARDIS shuddered onwards. Chapter 17. Summer Part 1 Narnia Calling. Narnia may yet have need of you. Aslan, The Chronicles of Narnia. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader FOX Walden Media. Location: Horse Guards Parade, Whitehall, London, England, Earth. Time: June 1953 CE. And then came to a stop. Harry left his last sentence hanging until he walked out the doors and onto the streets of the Whitehall. London, England, June 2nd, 1953. History lesson for you. When you left your original time stream in 1943, George VI was king. By 1951, King George was extremely sick, and he had to cancel many public engagements, and his Christmas address was edited together. On January 31st, 1952, he saw his daughter, Princess Elizabeth, off on her tour of Australia and New Zealand via Kenya. 6 days later, he was found dead. Elizabeth left England as the Princess Elizabeth, but she returned little more than a week later as Queen Elizabeth II. Now June 2nd, 1953, today is her coronation, and the psychic paper the doctor gave me is going to get us into Westminster Abbey. Today we will witness the crowning of one of Britain's longest-serving and best-loved monarchs. Harry said at a high speed. Throughout Harry's spiel, Lucy reveled in seeing London much more as she had remembered it. There was not a skyscraper in sight. The city had clearly thrown off the shackles of war, and the whole of the city, it seemed, was adorned in Union flags, and Lucy could almost feel the oncoming pomp and ceremony that the British did best. "So what do you say, milady? Shall we attend the coronation?" Harry tried his best to be pompous about it. Lucy, however, remembered the movie Harry and several of his friends recommended she watch, and putting on a Cockney accent she replied, "As long as you get me to the church on time." As soon as she finished speaking, the pair promptly burst out laughing, before Harry reached out and grabbed Lucy's hand and the pair ran off towards Westminster Abbey. Once they came within sight of the Abbey, they slowed to a walk and began to act regal. As they approached a guard, Harry flashed the psychic paper and they were waved in and directed to a seat. Harry looked and found that the paper named them as the Crown Prince and Princess of Denmark. The St. Edward's crown had just entered the Abbey when Harry and Lucy felt a slight pull of magic, growing gradually stronger and stronger until they found themselves suddenly lying in the forest, and Lucy became vaguely aware of the lamppost in the nearby clearing. Location: Lantern Waste, Great Western Woods, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. Harry and Lucy struggled to their feet and took in their surroundings. Lucy would recognize it anywhere. The mythical Lantern Waste, where Narnia was created, where Lucy met the Faun Tumnus, where Lucy had led the kings and queens of old into Narnia, and indeed where she had led them out of Narnia. Out from behind a thicket walked the great lion, His Most Excellent Majesty the King of Kings, Aslan himself. Both children tackled the lion, who merely rolled to his side and chuckled at the children's enthusiasm. "My children, dear one," Aslan said tenderly, looking first at Harry then at Lucy, "welcome back. You have been called back to Narnia because Father Time's great tapestry has become unwoven. The Calormenes have attacked before their time." Lucy looked strangely at Aslan as he said this. "Caspian and his queen Liliendil require the assistance of the kings and queens of old and other friends of Narnia, and so I shall take you there now," Aslan rumbled. Location: Castle Cair Paravel Island, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. As Aslan entered the throne room of Castle Cair Paravel, he was announced by a herald as His Most Excellent Majesty, Aslan, King of Kings, but that was not why he was here. As Caspian prepared to stand and bow to him, Aslan somehow told him to sit and wait, without even opening his mouth. Aslan stood to the side and announced his guests: Her Imperial and Royal Majesty High Queen Lucy, the Valiant of Narnia, Empress of the Lone Islands, Duchess of Glasswater, Countess of the Eastern March, Lady of Cair Paravel, Queen of the Silver Crown, Lioness of Narnia, and His Royal Highness Harry the Lionheart, Prince Consort of Narnia. There in the doorway stood Lucy and Harry, both giving off an aura of strength. Caspian was greatly relieved to see these two. Lucy was a legend as one of the saviors of Narnia, but this Harry was somewhat of an unknown. He had voyaged with the Dawn Treader and showed himself there as a formidable fighter. He managed to regain himself quickly and was able to greet both with a warm handshake. Soon Caspian was explaining to Harry and Lucy just what had been happening in their beloved Narnia. It was 3 years since they had last been in Narnia aboard the Dawn Treader, and while the peace Caspian had wrought had mostly lasted, the Calormenes had in the last few months made their first military move against Narnia and Archenland since Rabadash's folly in the Golden Age 1300 years ago, and the first battle fought on Narnian soil since the Second Battle of Baruna 6 years earlier. The Calormene navy, led by the Tisroc may he fall down the stairs and break his neck, had, in just 5 days, captured the whole of the Lone Islands, with Lord Byrne only just escaping the slaughter of loyal Narnians as he had been at Cair Paravel at the time. And then, just 2 days ago, the Calormenes had come ashore at the Northern March, the northern border of the Kingdom of Narnia, and had slowly been making their way southwest, quickly capturing most land north of the Great River until the new northern frontier of Narnia ran just barely north of the Great River, with Cair Paravel and Beaver's Dam being the first 2 settlements to truly withstand the Calormenes, and Caspian and Liliendil despaired at the speed at which the Calormenes had captured large swathes of Narnia, just by bringing the valiant queen back to Narnia. However, Aslan had brought hope to the Narnians, who believed it was only a matter of time. And as had been proven the 3 previous times Lucy had been in Narnia, hope is a powerful thing. Location: Narnian Army Camp, Aslan's How, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. Shortly after the arrival of Harry and Lucy in Narnia, the Narnian army had started massing at Aslan's How, near the strategically important fords of Baruna, ready for a counterattack against the Calormenes, just as they did in times of great peril. Location: the River Rush near Aslan's How, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. Not far from the Narnians' camp, a young boy pulled another and a young girl coughing and spluttering from the River Rush, as the second boy went on mumbling about, "Why do we always fall into Narnia?" The first boy stood straight and looked around, recognizing where he was immediately recognized it. He'd know it anywhere, having traveled the area widely as king, and having also been here just 3 years ago from his point of view. The boy, Edmund, now pulled his cousin Eustace and Eustace's friend Jill to their feet, and unsure of another plan, set off towards Aslan's How. Location: Narnian Army Camp, Aslan's How, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. Edmund and Eustace soon came upon the How and found it to be a feverish hive of activity, and Edmund's keen mind very quickly recognized an army on a war footing. He wondered to himself just who the Narnians could be at war with as he approached. "Halt! State your name in business." A voice with a distinctive accent rang out from behind Edmund, and he turned to stand face to face with Drinian, captain of the Dawn Treader. "King Edmund? Eustace, my boy? Who is the young woman with you?" Drinian asked when the boys turned, and seeing that it was them, knelt before them. "This is Jill Pole." Eustace introduced her to the captain of the Dawn Treader. Not 5 minutes later, Caspian came striding out of the How and greeted Edmund and Eustace warmly, and Caspian was followed out by Lucy, we thought we'd never see you again." Edmund ran up and hugged his younger sister, before she surprised Eustace somewhat by hugging him too. The biggest surprise for Edmund was when he asked just who Narnia was at war against. "Calormen." Caspian had answered him pensively. "They attacked as from the north and have captured most of the land north of the Great River. They have currently staged at Chippingford, and their plan, it would seem, is to use the river to make a lightning attack on Cair Paravel. Which is why we will be waiting for them at the fords of Baruna," Caspian explained. 2 weeks passed and news filtered down that the Calormene army had started to travel southwards along the great river Narnia from their staging post at Chippingford, and the Narnian army stood ready. Queen Lucy the Valiant and Lady Jill Pole, as Caspian insisted on calling her, joined the archers on the high ground above the Narnian army, while Harry, Edmund, Eustace and Caspian were leading the army on the ground. The Narnians waited apprehensively as the Calormenes approached, and then almost in slow motion, the battle started. Lucy commanded the archers to loose the first volley, and hundreds of arrows rained down on the Calormenes, but through sheer weight of numbers it made little difference to their ranks as the two opposing armies charged each other. The boys were soon in the thick of the action, and try as they might, neither Lucy nor Jill was able to keep them in sight. Down below the archers' posts, the battle was raging, and Harry soon found himself in close combat with a rather large and hulking Calormene. But with careful and selective use of the deep magic, Harry was able to even the odds, and eventually, when his opponent grew overconfident, he stabbed the man through his unguarded stomach. Eustace was soon felling opponents in a similar way, silently thanking Reepicheep for the sword-fighting lessons he had given Eustace while they sailed towards World's End. The tide of the battle ebbed and flowed backwards and forwards from one side to the other, neither looking like getting on top for several hours, all the boys defeating many opponents and escaping injury many times each. But then, Lucy, from over 100 meters away from the front lines, took aim at the Calormene Tisroc, and with a shot that even her sister Susan, famous for being the greatest Narnian archer, would have struggled to reproduce, loosed an arrow and from long range watched with a strange satisfaction as the arrow crossed the distance rapidly and embedded itself in the Tisroc's neck, piercing his jugular. The gurgling scream which erupted from the dying man's throat sounding the death knell for the Calormene invasion of Narnia. Location: various places across Narnia. Time: 2309 New York. Over the coming weeks, the Narnian army continued to push the remaining Calormenes out of Narnia, and within a month, all of the kingdom was returned to the rule of Caspian X, the Seafarer. Location: Castle Cair Paravel, Cair Paravel Island, Kingdom of Narnia, Narnia. Time: 2310 New York. By the time the Narnians had driven the Calormenes from their borders, the new year had begun and Caspian's reign entered its 7th year. Caspian presented the High King and Queen Edmund and Lucy, the Prince Consort Harry, and Knight and Dame of Narnia Eustace and Jill to the Narnian public and put on a great feast at Cair Paravel in celebration of the victory over Calormen. Soon though, it became time for Aslan to return everyone to their own time, and Lucy and Harry said emotional goodbyes to everyone before Aslan roared and they were in Narnia no more. Location: Westminster Abbey, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: June 1953 CE. Harry and Lucy found themselves back in the Abbey the moment they had left, just as the crown made its entrance into the Abbey, and Harry especially watched in awe as his grandmother was crowned while Lucy smiled, remembering the feelings she experienced at her own coronation in Narnia years ago. Location: Buckingham Palace, Westminster, London, England, Earth. Time: June 1993 CE. James dear, how was school? The Queen asked once Harry was seated in the small private reading room within the palace that very few members of the household knew about. It was okay, Grandmum. And so Harry launched into a massive spiel about his entire year, and then added a question to the end. And do you know what I did before I came home? He asked, subtly laying a Polaroid photo on the coffee table between them. The Queen looked at the photo and chuckled. I had a feeling you would go to my coronation at some point, James. I'm actually surprised you didn't do so earlier. Now, the Quidditch World Cup is on this summer, and I have 10 seats in the royal box for the final. I would like you and 8 of your friends to join me. Yes, Grandmum. I'll send out invitations straight away, Harry said, hugging his grandmother before running off to his bedroom to send the letters with Hedwig. Summer 2 Quidditch World Cup. Chapter 18. Summer Part 2 Quidditch World Cup. Rough game Quidditch. Brutal, but no one's died in years. Someone will vanish occasionally, but they'll turn up in a month or two. George and Fred Weasley, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Warner Brothers. Location: the Royal Box, Stadium UK, near Godric's Hollow, Wales, Earth. Time: July 1993 CE. Harry, his grandmum and friends were seating in the Royal Box at the Quidditch World Cup final, clutching their omnioculars, eagerly awaiting what, for most of them, was their first look at professional Quidditch. Then, in the adjacent box, which had clear walls just as the Royal Box did, 2 men entered and walked to the front 2 seats, and sitting down in front of the 2 magical equivalents of microphones that were situated there, the younger of the 2 began to speak, his voice being magically amplified so it could be heard all across the stadium and transmitted via the Wizarding wireless network into every home in Great Britain. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Stadium UK. We are here near Godric's Hollow, where Bowman Wright invented the Golden Snitch, just 20 miles from Queerditch Marsh, the ceremonial home of Quidditch, to witness the final of the 422nd Quidditch World Cup. The older of the 2 men now started his commentary in an unusual, decidedly nasal accent and started his run-through of the World Cup so far. Thank you, Ludo, and it's marvelous to be here tonight, going out live on the Wizarding wireless network, and right around the world, for what will surely be a fascinating contest between these 2 teams. Now let us remind you of the results so far. Harry focused back in on what the commentators were saying as they began talking about the quarterfinals. And so on to the quarters, where the first match was the 3rd quarterfinal at Vimborne Arena. Bagman started. This was an absolutely cracking match, Bennett continued, taking 21 hours and 52 minutes, by far the longest match of the tournament. And it saw Group B winners Ireland going down to Group C runners-up New Zealand. Ireland were leading 370 to 230 when New Zealand seeker Gary Marshall pulled off a spectacular catch of the snitch, just beating out Aidan Lynch, allowing New Zealand to progress 380 to 370. The second quarterfinal, held at the historic Quidditch pitch at Hogwarts, saw shock Group D winners, and first-time competitors Persia upset perennial contenders and Group B runners-up United States 250 to 110 in just under 5 hours. The match was a decidedly brutal affair with no less than 450 infractions looked at by the review committee after the match, including the Persian captain for the attempted use of a pit viper against the opposition keeper. Bagman took over describing the second match before Bennett took over to describe the first and fourth. The 4th quarterfinal was held at Piddle Quidditch Arena, home of my old club Puddlemere United. This match saw 1991 European Cup and Group C winners Bulgaria decimate a hapless Wales 270-20, Viktor Krum, Bulgarian seeking prodigy, snatching the snitch 1 hour and 40 minutes into the game. The first quarter-final at Holyhead, the last to be played, saw Group A winners Australia, in the quarters for the first time since 1970, taking on Group D runners-up and South American powerhouse Brazil in what, despite the scoreline, was a closely fought contest, lasting 9 hours and 12 minutes, Australian seeker Lucy Karunda finally capturing the snitch to seal Australia's first-ever semi-final berth 300-90. Bagman then briefly described the semi-finals. The semis certainly were a mixed bag, with the second semi-final, played at Edinburgh between Bulgaria and New Zealand, being decided by just the second penalty shootout in World Cup history when 4 hours into the game, with the scores 210-60 in favor of New Zealand. Viktor Krum beat Gary Marshall in a race to the snitch, and the Bulgarians got lucky when keeper Lev Zograf managed a fingertip save on the last shot of the shootout, giving the Bulgarians the win 5-4. The first semi-final at Ilkley Moor between Australia and Persia, on the other hand, was a complete anticlimax, as Australian seeker Lucy Karunda caught the snitch in just 4.5 seconds, officially the fastest catch in World Cups and the second fastest of all time behind legendary Tuchel and English seeker Roderick Plumpton, the Australians progressing to the final 150-0. Bagman here wrapped up the recap, before he crossed to special commentator, Holyhead Harpies captain Gwenog Jones on the pitch for the condition report. It's quite a wet night here in Wales, and this will make things difficult for both teams. The quaffle will get heavier as it gets wetter, and that will make for an interesting contest. Also, there's quite a swirling breeze at all levels of the stadium, and it will be interesting to see which team copes better. And now, will you please all be upstanding for the British magical anthem, Merlin Save the Queen, and the ceremonial coin toss by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Bagman announced. The whole stadium launched into the anthem, a rousing rendition that showed the large number of Brits who had turned out for the match, despite the absence of the 4 British teams from the final. The Queen operated down to the pitch and magically projected around the whole stadium. She stood between Kenneth Hastings and Vasily Dimitrov, the respective captains both clad in team dress robes, and tossed the specially minted galleon, watching as it somersaulted several times before landing on the grass, head side up. The news here is that Australia have won the toss and they will fly to the northern end of the pitch for the first 2 hours. We will be back for the mascots and the team introductions after a short break. Bennett informed the crowd as the scoreboards flashed with messages from the major sponsors Butterbeer and Nimbus. Shortly afterwards, the mascots were announced as Vila, a race of ethereally beautiful women who, when angered, could throw fireballs, and who could charm most men into a stupor, which Harry and Neville both found themselves unaffected by, and Hoppy, a tamed marsupial lion Draco marsupialis wearing boxing gloves. Shortly after this, the teams flew out as Bagman announced them. First up, we have the Australian national Quidditch team. First, the Chasers, number 1, Matthew Achunga of the Mallee Marsupials. Number 2, the captain, Kenneth Hastings of the Wollongong Warriors. Number 3, Maria Monteith of the Thunderlara Thunderers. Now the beaters, number 4, Kelly Wakaranga Pawara, this was pronounced Wakaranga Powero of the Thunderers. Number 5, Kylie Meadows of the Warriors. The keeper, number 6, is Johnny Nuhaka of the Uluru Devil Dingoes, and the seeker, wearing number 7, from the Wollongong Warriors, Lucy Karunda. Bagman yelled the last 2 words as the Australians, wearing green robes with a golden kangaroo on the chest, did laps of the stadium, before proceeding to the northern end of the pitch and began running through its warm-up drills. Bagman then moved on to announcing the Bulgarians. And now we have the Bulgarian national Quidditch team. First, the Chasers, number 1, Alexei Levski of the Vratsa Vultures. Number 2, Klara Ivanova of the Sofia Serpents. Number 3, the captain, Vasily Dimitrov of the Vultures. Now the beaters, number 4, Ivan Volkov of the Serpents. Number 5, Pyotr Volchanov of the Vultures. The keeper, number 6, is Lev Zograf of the Balkan Barbarians, and the seeker, wearing number 7, from the Vratsa Vultures, Vyaktur Krumm. Bagman once again yelled the last 2 words as the Bulgarians moved to the southern end of the pitch, their black and maroon robes a dark contrast to the bright colors of the crowd. The man, Mostafa, kicked open the crate, and the bludgers and golden snitch soared off into the arena as the scoreboards now flashed Australia 0, Bulgaria 0. And so the final countdown is on now. There go the bludgers and the snitch. The woman, Jones, mounted her broom and soared up between the teams, ready to observe the opening toss, and she sternly informed both teams to keep it fair, before Mostafa lifted the quaffle with both hands and threw it straight up into the air with a short, sharp blast on his whistle. And so now the quaffle is released, the crowd erupts. From there the match turned fast-paced, and aside from a few special comments, the commentary was restricted to saying the names of the players as they received the quaffle. Harry and Lucy were using their omnioculars to watch action replays, play-by-play descriptions, and goodness knows what other features. The two of them each pointed out different plays as they happened to the group and marveled at the speed of the game. As both teams shot all over the field, scoring slowed down, and after the first 2 hours the score had reached 80-70 in favor of Bulgaria.